Mechanics, good evening. It is Friday. Welcome to Friday. How was y'all's week? Was it busy? Was it chill? Mine was so busy. I was out on track all week, putting in the laps, putting in, the effort, as we call it, the effort. Hello, Kurodiah. Thank you for joining. And everybody else out there that's lurking right now, I see you out there. All right. So, plan for tonight, we're going to talk about Formula One. We're going to talk about why I love Formula One, why it's cool, why I enjoy some of the memes in Formula One. And we're also going to do a driver tier list as well. So we're going to rank all the drivers on the grid. And before we get into that, I want to go through, I want to hold a little team meeting because we're at the end of the week. So welcome to our team meeting for April 19th, 2024. Let's do some learning. Yep. Okay, so again, welcome mechanics. Welcome to Friday night. I hope you all have had a good meal, or you got a nice little drink or your little snackies, and you are settling in for a night of fun chat. So first up, I want to recap the week. So Monday had a very successful debut, I think. I've gone back, I've watched the VOD. I posted the VOD up on my YouTube. So if you're looking for VODs, and they've already expired off of Twitch, which I think they do within 7 days for those that aren't affiliate yet. Unfortunately, I haven't reached affiliate yet. So that VOD will disappear soon off of Twitch, but it is forever uploaded to my YouTube, which you can find the link for below. And if you just want to go on YouTube and search Owen Aeon, it'll come up there. Yeah. So you can go ahead and cringe at my debut forevermore up on my YouTube. And I just want to say thank you all so much for your support. I had a really good turnout for the debut, and everyone was chatting and having a good time and get me gassed up, and it was super, super cool. Hello, Cielo. Welcome. Yeah, so debut was awesome. Really had a good time. Got some great feedback after the fact from some really great people and all my friends. So couldn't be happier with that, honestly. I did quite a bit of prep work for it, but it can always go south at the turn of a hat. So I was really happy with it. So thank you all for showing up and making me feel good about it and feel special. No worries. We all get a little distracted by our MMOs and our games. So I have no expectations. Even if nobody showed up, I would still want to bring the same energy, the same level of professionalism and all that. So because I am recording this and I want to upload some nice VODs and I want to get some clips out of it sometimes too. So even if I'm not streaming to anybody, I feel like I can always grab a few clips, here and there. Maybe I can throw them up on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or what have you. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, thank you so much. And on Wednesday we had our Art of Rally. So this was my first game stream. This was on Wednesday, and Art of Rally turned out to be a really fun Zatsu game. It was very pretty. It was a little bit challenging the first few tracks, but I caught on pretty quick, and after a while I could kind of like autopilot through it. Like I wasn't trying very hard. It was more fun just talking with you guys about anime and what you're doing and what you're working on, and just shooting the breeze. So I think we had a nice chill stream with some good music and some pretty scenery. So I had a good time playing Art of Rally, and that's a good game that we can probably pick up at any time, because all I have to do is plug my controller in and we can just have at it and check out some new tracks, some new cars, and just talk about stuff together. So we'll definitely come back to that at some point. So I wanted to follow up on something from last stream. So I was talking about rotary engines versus, your straight 4-cylinder engines. And I was trying to pull down an animation. So EFAF eHanby sent this to me, and they said this is a good illustration here. So what you're looking at here is basically how a rotary engine looks on the inside. So the rotary part of it, this Dorito that spins around, it moves, and the crankshaft kind of stays in the center, and the gears, the gearing kind of, spins it around. So what's actually happening here is you see the blue when that lights up. That's the first part. How do I describe this? That's the first section where the fuel and air mixture comes into the compartment, and then as it spins around, it compresses the fuel air mixture, and then there are two spark plugs here that ignite the fuel air mixture, and it explodes and makes this turn, and then it pushes the exhaust out through the red section here, through that hole you see, and then it continues to do that. So blue is the fuel air mixture coming in, purple and orange is the mixture getting compressed against the spark plugs. The spark plugs are igniting it, causing a little explosion, and then making the exhaust go out through the hole there. So as that happens, this spins, and it spins really fast. It's spinning like hundreds of times in a minute. So it's yeah, and there may be multiple of these in an engine. Like you could have like 4 of these rotaries all going at the same time. But like I said in the last stream, it's not really any more it's actually it's actually like more inefficient than a straight 4-cylinder engine, but it's just cool. I think is the general consensus. I forget, like the improvements in horsepower and things like that are all kind of negligible. It's just an interesting technology. Yeah, so that's a rotary engine, so I'm glad I could get an animation for you to illustrate that. Next slide. All right, so new stuff. I have a new Fugi model. Yay! I commissioned this a little bit before debut from an artist called Yui Bear. And Yui Bear is a streamer on Twitch. She's rigged her own model, and she does rigging and cute, like chibi, Fugi models like this. So definitely go check her out. She was just returned to streaming after like a little bit of a break, and she's open for commissions on VGen. So you can go get rigging, illustrations, and animations from her. vgen.co/YuiBearVT. The VT stands for VTuber, if you didn't know that. I'm really happy with this model. It's really, really cute. And if I collab with anybody in the near future, you're going to see it on their stream. All right. So next week, schedule will be out soon. I'll probably work on it tomorrow. We'll not have a Friday stream next week. I'm going to be going away on a little trip, so I'll be gone Friday through the weekend. Ideas for next week. So I think I'm going to be doing a keyboard building hand cam stream, depending on if the parts come in on time. So look forward to that. If it's not next week, it will probably be the following week. But I'm really looking forward to building this keyboard. It's a very, very nice one, really high end, very expensive. And we're going to be doing the soldering of the switches to the board and the full assembly of the board together. So the plate, the circuit board, the switches, all that is going to go into the board. So it should be probably about a 2-hour stream, I would think. If I go at it pretty quickly, because the switches are already lubed. I've already tested the printed circuit board, so that all works out. So really I just have to put the thing together and solder it. So that should be fun. What I want to do more iRacing. So I want to get the most out of my subscription, because it's a subscription, right? If I don't play it, I'm just like wasting my money. So I definitely want to do more iRacing, but I don't really want to schedule it. I kind of want scheduled streams to be the more higher quality, kind of like we're doing today, like more prep, more planned. But with iRacing, I'd rather just do like more guerrilla streams. So like lower effort, just kind of jump into a car, jump into a series I'm interested in or a track I want to learn, and just like practice and maybe do a few races. So look out for that. Some nights I may just want to just hop into the car, do iRacing out of the blue, and not really hype it up or anything. Just throw it out there, see who shows up, see who wants to watch me crash into a wall or take out some competitors. So yeah, that's kind of my plan going forward. But yeah, watch out for the schedule soon. Again, my social tags and schedule. So again, my fan tag is Aeon Team. If you want to tweet something about me, you can always @ me on Twitter and Blue Sky. My art tag is Owen Art. And my schedule, as of right now, we're doing 2 to 3 streams per week, depending on IRL. And I generally stream at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and keep your eyes out for those guerrilla streams. And once again, thank you to our sponsors, Super Maneuver Energy, Deer VPN, JLG Investments, and Hirano Ferry. Thank you so much. All right. So let's jump in to the pizza oven. All right, so tonight I want to talk about Formula One. Why do I like Formula One? Sorry, I drank a water there. Yeah, we got the pizza. Why do I like Formula One? I like Formula One because of this. So that was a video I took when I was at the Canadian Grand Prix a couple of years ago. Went up to Montreal, spent a few days in Montreal hanging around the city, and then going to the Formula One weekend. So it was so much fun. The grandstands were packed. The vibe was really good. It was like kind of like one of the first big things I did after a lot of like COVID restrictions were lifted and lockdowns were done. And it was like one of the first big major event I went to with like a big crowd after that. And Montreal, beautiful city, had a really good time. The food's amazing. People are really, really nice. The city is super interesting as well. And the summertime, it's like totally like under construction everywhere. But the subway system is like friggin' amazing. It's so easy to get around. Yeah, really, really enjoyed the city and really enjoyed, how easy it was to get to the track and, go see the races and the practice sessions and the qualifying. It's a little bit funny because like it seems to rain every other day there. So there was like the qualifying day, I definitely got like totally rained on. Wasn't planning for it because I'm dumb. Had to like run around the city going to like 3 or 4 different drugstores trying to find like ponchos. And of course, because it's a Formula One weekend and it's raining, like everybody wants a poncho. So like a lot of the smaller stores were like totally sold out, but I eventually found a drugstore that had a poncho. Got that. Tried to stay as dry as possible, but regardless of that, like I'm a fan, like I love it, like I want to be out there with the rest of the fans cheering on the drivers, seeing what happens, attending the race. So just that vibe of like being like part of the spectators and hearing the sounds of the engines and seeing the cars and watching them go around the track, it's a big deal to me. So I want to show you first kind of like some cool photos in F1, and I'll talk about like what's going on in each of the photos and kind of like little bits about everything. So let's bring up our photo viewer here, and then let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. I had it perfect and then I have to mess with it, right? All right. So this is a photo. This is a very iconic photo. So this is just like the cars going down the track at the start of the race. This circuit, I think this is Bahrain. And these are just like, this is what F1 looks like, right? These are the cars. They're going down the straightaway. They're kicking up sparks. This is a night race. There's not a lot of night races in F1. There's only like a handful throughout the year. Out of the currently 24 races on the calendar, I think 2 or 3 of them are night races right now. I could be wrong about that. I think it's Bahrain, Singapore, and Las Vegas are the night races. And if I miss one, I apologize for that. But the night races are really cool. You get the sparks kicking up behind the cars, and it's just a really cool vibe. The lights, and they have fireworks after the race and all that. So it's a really neat vibe. So this photo, this is one of my favorite drivers, and we'll get to him in one of the tier lists. This is Lando Norris, and Lando drives for a team called McLaren, and this is him finishing P3. I believe in a race, maybe a sprint race. I'm not entirely sure, but his entire side of the garage for the team is like on the fence here, hanging off the side, cheering him on. They're really pumped that, he came in a podium position on the race. And this is just a really cool shot because this is like, after 2 hours of racing and everyone's like dead tired, and, it's gripping, and, Formula One is very, very dangerous as well. I mean, there's a lot of great safety measures, but like all motorsport is dangerous, right? It's like you're putting your life on the line. You're trying not to crash into your competitors. You're driving these cars that are worth like several $1 million each, and many millions of dollars worth of investment and research and all that. I mean, a Formula One team will spend upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars in any season. Recently there's been like cost caps on how much teams can spend, but it's still just like the amount of money these teams are spending on staff and research and putting the cars together and the engine design and all that is just like it's absurd. And a lot of people will say it's like, it's kind of a waste, right? But it is what it is, right? It's a spectacle. It's there's a lot of money involved, so yeah, it's a really cool shot. And this is another shot. This is also the same driver from that race. This Lando Norris. He's in what they call Parc Fermé, which is when they bring all the cars in after the race is over, and they park them, in a section of the pit lane where once they exit the car, the teams are not allowed to touch the cars. And they're not allowed to touch the cars because there are rules about rules around what they call scrutineering, which is ensuring that the cars are not tampered with after the race. So this is all part of the rules and regulations of Formula One. So let me talk about Formula One in what it means, right? So the FIA, which is the ruling body of the motorsport world, determines a set of rules and regulations that certain series follow. So Formula One is one of these series, and is considered to be like the quote unquote pinnacle of motorsport. It's like top of the line, the best technology, the most money, the most prestigious, the most, limited, and the greatest of the motorsport series. Arguably, for some people, some people prefer rally, as we saw the other day, or some people might prefer like an American series like IndyCar or even NASCAR. But Formula One is generally considered to be like the top level of motorsport. And the set of rules and regulations and how the cars are designed, and what sort of mandatory requirements they have to meet and safety regulations they have to meet are all part of the formula. The formula is the set of rules and regulations and what the teams have to abide by to participate in the series. So that's why they call it Formula One. And there's also other series like Formula 2, Formula 3, Formula 4. Those are all like what they call feeder series that go into Formula One. So as kids, literally children, grow up racing go-karts, they, become better at what they do. They become more advanced, and then they move on to the next series, which is, a Formula 4 series. And then from there, a Formula 3 and a Formula 2 if they want to continue doing open-wheeled motorsports. So yeah, so this is a photo of Lando Norris, and he's getting congratulated by his team, and you can tell like they're super happy. It's a big deal to win or to get on the podium for a race. And it's a big deal not only because it's what the drivers are striving for, they're striving to be the best, but it's also because of the money involved too. So what it is the Formula One has 2 championships attached to it. This is a little confusing, but it has 2 championships. It has both a driver's championship and it has a constructor's championship. So the driver's championship is the drivers competing against each other to get the most points. And at the end, and whoever gets the most points mathematically by the end of the series becomes the Formula One world champion. The Formula One world champion it's a big deal because it's like bragging rights. They also get, you know, like better sponsorships, better personal sponsorships, better deals, right? You know, and like all the money and accolades and awards that come with it. But what's almost a bigger deal is the Constructors' Championship, which is where the constructors being the teams that are involved in Formula One. And depending on what order the constructors finish in, based on the number of points the drivers bring in, is how much money they're going to get at the end of the year. So if you're number one, you're going to get the biggest cut of the pie. If you're 10th, you're going to get, I wouldn't say next to nothing, but like not as much, right? And that money comes in through sponsorship deals, you know, entry fees, all sorts of avenues, right? So if a constructor wins the championship, or they come in second or third or even fourth, they're getting quite a lot of money to spend on development and staff and making their team better for next year. So you definitely want to be the best, not only because of bragging rights and because of sponsorships, but also because Formula One itself pays you a ton of money to come out on top. And that's very important. So this photo here, this is the Miami track. So this is a new race that came on the calendar just a couple of years ago, because Formula One started to explode in the US. One of the main reasons it gained such popularity in the last few years is because when the pandemic started, a lot of people were, you know, of course, we were all spending time at home. We were probably watching more media at home, spending more time like watching streams and stuff. And one of the more popular documentaries to come out was not only Tiger King, but also Formula One Drive to Survive. So Drive to Survive on Netflix is one of the main reasons that a ton of Americans suddenly got into Formula One and found it interesting. It's a really good documentary series, at least like the first like 2 to 3 seasons, where they kind of, you know, hone in on some of the more interesting drivers in the series. They spend more time with the teams, and they show you kind of like all the ins and outs, and they really like, they amp it up. They amp up the drama, they amp up, you know, like the risk factor, and you know, it's a very Hollywood-ish production, but it's also like very fun to watch and very interesting, and how much complexity there is in Formula One, and what the sport means to people, and what the drivers think, you know, while they're driving like 200 miles an hour and, you know, on the verge of, you know, flying off into a wall somewhere. So it's a really, really interesting series. I definitely recommend it. That's how I got into Formula One. Was I heard from someone I follow online. They were watching it. They were getting into motorsport, and they were actually getting into iRacing at the time, and they recommended Drive to Survive. So I watched like 2 episodes, and I was like hooked. Like I watched the entire season within like a week. So go check it out, or at least watch the trailer on YouTube. So this is the Miami Grand Prix. So this is just like a cool shot of the grandstand. I think this is by the finish line, or the first turn there, so you can kind of see the first turn going out there. This next photo, this is a steering wheel on the cars. So the steering wheels are really cool because like they're just a mess of buttons and dials, and there's a screen in the middle, and there's all these LED lights and stuff, and they're just like really complicated. So each one of these steering wheels is worth like between $10,000 or $20,000 each. And each team basically designs their own from scratch, depending on what the team is focusing on technology wise, what they need in the car, what makes the most sense to the drivers as well. Like some drivers have specified, I want this type of clutch, or I want these types of buttons. So they're very hyper specific to what the teams need in their cars, and also what their drivers are looking for. For example, Lewis Hamilton, who's a multi world champion, has a special way he holds his steering wheel when he starts, and his clutch is set up in a way so that he doesn't accidentally drop the clutch and miss the start or do something really terrible. So it's really interesting to kind of look into like how the drivers have their wheels set up, like where they hold their steering wheels and what buttons they're pushing and things like that. There's even like analysis videos I've seen, I think on YouTube, where people will spend time and kind of pick apart a camera view from within the car where they're watching what the drivers are pushing on their wheel and like diagnosing like, okay, this button did this button did that, they're shifting up, they're shifting down, and that's just really interesting to watch, to see like just how much the drivers are like touching the wheel, pushing the different buttons, turning the dials while they're going through multiple turns through a track at 160 to 200 miles an hour, and like how they do all that while also like trying to like get the perfect apex where they're trying to like make a turn as best as possible and like not screw up in the process. So these guys are honestly like really incredible, like all the things that they do while they're racing, like messing with the wheel, making the right turns, like having good racecraft, which is making their way around the track and knowing like when's a good time to like overtake another driver or do something that's beneficial to the race. This next photo, this is Max Verstappen. He is the most recent world champion. He is a two-time world champ, 2022, 2023. Yeah, two-time world champion or three-time world champion. I can't even remember anymore. He's won the last couple world championships. He's probably on his way to win the next one, even though the season just started. And this is him just chilling after a race. So he's won the race. He's got his really big champagne bottle here, which he probably used on the podium to spray somebody with. He's got his trophy from this track. I cannot remember what track this is. I think it's Miami, maybe. I can't remember. So the trophies all have different designs depending on, what... I forget who designs them, but like I think it's usually whoever's running the race, like the organizers of the track. I think it's something to do with that, or who's the sponsor. And then another small champagne bottle here. But what's interesting is this is him in like his personal room in a motorhome in the paddock. So in the paddock, and I think there's a shot of the paddock somewhere in these photos here. It's basically the place where all the teams bring in their own motorhomes and their own hospitality units. And it's restricted from like the general public when it comes to like attendees for the race, though you can spend a lot of money as an attendee and get what's called a paddock pass and be able to spend time in the paddock. Those packages are usually like upwards of $6,000 to $10,000. So it's really just like VIPs, right? It's VIP access. You can walk around the paddock. You can see the drivers. If you time it right, you can probably get a photo with the drivers if they're willing to stop for you. And you'll see kind of like the who's who of Formula One while you're back there. So, and within that paddock, there's these motorhomes. So the teams, Formula One is called the traveling circus, and that's for a reason. It's because they're shipping their cars, they're shipping their motorhomes and all of their setup and their parts and everything they need all over the world. And the logistics required for that are like tremendous. Like there's probably like multiple sets of equipment being shipped on ships right now out in the ocean to the next like 3 or 4 races that are going on. And part of the stuff that shows up is motorhomes. So the motorhomes are placed in the paddock where they're basically kind of like the home base, the mobile HQ for the team. And they'll have like basically you walk in and it's like a hospitality area where they'll have like a bar or a coffee shop kind of, and you can go in and get a cup of coffee or you can get like a light snack. And it's usually where some of the teams, they're having like impromptu meetings with other teams or individuals, like high level executives, like meeting each other. There's even like sponsorship deals being brokered and things like that. And then in the back rooms, like usually on like the second floor of these motorhomes, there's actually like offices and private rooms. So like a team principal, who's like the guy who usually runs the team, he'll have like a room to his own where he can have like a private office. The drivers generally have their own private rooms where they can, spend a few minutes to collect themselves or put their belongings, or even in certain cases like get a massage from their physio therapist and their trainer, and work with their trainer and do stuff like that. So it's really interesting, these sort of motor homes and the paddock and the mobile offices and all that. It's really fascinating. So this is a shot of a garage and the Formula One car in the garage. So this is the Ferrari team, and this is the car of Carlos Sainz, who's one of the drivers with Ferrari. And you can see this entire garage is lined over the walls here with this paneling, and all this paneling is equipment that the team brings in. As I was saying, like, they ship all this stuff around the world, and they bring all this stuff and they line the walls with it. And this is where they keep a lot of their tools. They have computer systems and wiring. A lot of the computer systems are all networked, and they go linked back, networked to their home base back in wherever their home base is. For most of the teams, that's in Great Britain. It's in the UK, generally around the Silverstone track, which is another racetrack in the UK, which is where Formula One is held in the UK. And for Ferrari, it's in Italy, of course, because they're an Italian team. So like all their tools, all their equipment and networking stuff is all stored along, on the outside walls here, so that the mechanics can quickly like grab tools and equipment, and the engineers can work with them on diagnosing issues and, talking to, all different parts of the team, the strategists and all that. So all these folks around here, these are all engineers and mechanics. They're all people that need to be in the garage working on the car. They all have different roles in what they're doing. Some of these guys are just standing around. Some of them could be part of the pit crew. They could be like crew chiefs, where they're the ones that are directing, like, okay, the car gets to come out now. We're going to tell the car to come out now. And they all have these earpieces and microphones and headsets, and the teams are always constantly in communication with each other. Depending on what level you're in with the team, you may be hearing different things. Like, I think the pit crew is, mostly communicated with by the crew chiefs, whereas, you get a little bit higher up in the order, and you get to like the race engineers that are talking with pretty much everybody, and the drivers. They're probably hearing like 3 or 4 levels of communication all at the same time. So it's a very intense workplace environment. The requirements to become like a mechanic or an engineer are very, very high. You have to have a really sharp mindset. You have to have good qualifications. You also have to have basically no life, or be willing to give up a large part of your home life or your personal life, because they are traveling throughout the year. So like I said before, there's 24 races a year right now in F1. They're doing stuff almost every weekend. There's 52 weeks in a year and 24 races. So 24 weeks out of the year, stuff is going on. And if stuff is not going on, they're usually traveling back and forth between home base or where they're off to next. We have many situations during the year where you have a double header or even a triple header. That's where you have a race 2 weeks in a row or 3 weeks in a row. And the races are not just one day. Formula One weekends are structured so that the teams are showing up basically on a Thursday. On Friday, they're doing practice 1 and 2, so they have 2 practice sessions, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. On Saturday, you generally have practice 3 in the morning, and then you have qualifying in the afternoon. Qualifying being the timing that sets the order for the race on Sunday. And then on Sunday, you have the Grand Prix, you have the big race. So for 4 days out of that week, you're working your ass off, right? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And really, like, as soon as the race is like ending on Sunday, everybody's packing up, going home. And that's a lot of work. So really, to work in Formula One, it's like you basically have to have no life or be willing to, give up a life to do this kind of stuff. But it pays well. You get to see the world. You work in a really fast-paced, interesting environment. So if that's like the thing you're into, it's pretty cool. not for me. Well, I'm a driver, so, you know, I just get to show up on Sunday and do the thing, right? So yeah, that's like a little bit about the team. So we got the car here in the center. So right now, this is a Formula One car. These are the wheels and the tires are not on the car at the moment. So you're seeing a car without wheels or tires. And this alert up here, so this is a message from race control. It says start of qualifying will be delayed by 10 minutes. So for whatever reason, qualifying was delayed on this Saturday, and it looks like they're just about to get the car totally together and out on track, but they've got 10 minutes, so they really leave it down to the wire to get the tires fitted on and get everything going, because they want to make sure that, you know, everything is timed perfectly and they're not wasting any energy, or they're not wasting tire temperature, like I talked about tire blankets the other day, and they're not, miscalculating how much fuel needs to go in the car either. That's a little bit about the teams in the garage. Next photo. So this is what I was talking about before. This is the paddock. So the paddock is basically the almost a street. It's almost like the street behind the track. So you'll have like the racetrack and your grandstand, and behind the grandstands is the paddock. So these are all motor homes that I was talking about. These are all mobile units with offices and hospitality and like chefs and, you know, bartenders and like everyone that works in the team in their mobile HQs. So this one over here is like an F1 branded main like F1 motorhome, which probably has services for people like VIPs. Like if you're paying the big bucks to come in and spend time in the paddock, this probably has some hospitality services here. Behind that, we have Alpine F1 team. They're the French team. They have their motorhome there. And then, you know, all the teams going back behind it. Over here on the right, we have McLaren's motorhome. You can tell by the McLaren logo up there. So they're all very distinct and different as well. You can see these designs are very, very modernist. They all have their own branding. They all have like a different design. They're all like really, really cool. There's some great videos online where some of the drivers will take you on tours through the motorhomes. There's one for Mercedes a couple of years back where Lewis Hamilton did like a little tour of a motorhome, and that was like really cool. It's really fascinating to see like how efficiently they can pack in the space and how it's all like put together at the, you know, beginning of the weekend. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And a lot of these people here, you can see a lot of them are really well dressed. These are usually, VIPs that are paid a lot of that money to be in the paddock. They're fans. They're there because they've got money. All right, next shot. So this is in the pit lane at the race. So this is what a pit crew looks like when they're out practicing on the paddock because of horse racing. Yep, that's exactly what it is. Funny you should say that. So the most famous team in Formula One, which is Ferrari, it's the full name is Scuderia Ferrari, and Scuderia actually is Italian for racing stable. So you know the logo for Ferrari is the prancing horse, and Scuderia. Let me type it out. Scuderia, yeah. So it's a racing stable, right? So yeah, there's references to horse racing in there in a few different places. So this is the pit lane, and this is the pit crew for the Alfa Romeo team doing looks like practice pit stops. So what they're doing is let's talk about a few different members of the team here. So this guy here, he's watching the action. I think he's probably one of the crew chiefs. He's seeing how well the team is doing. He's probably timing them and supervising like what's going on. Oh wait, you can't actually see my, oh no, you can see my mouse. Okay. These guys, these are the pit crew here. So we've got a few different roles. So this guy here, he's a jack man. So we have two jack men, and they have jacks that go under the car. We have one in the rear and one in the front. They need to be so extremely precise to fit the jack under the car to prop it up off the ground. So it's a hydraulic jack. They prop it up off the ground. Then these guys on the sides, they're standing in. So one guy on each wheel, so 4 guys hold a gun. What is it called? A pneumatic gun, which goes in. They go in and undo the gasket on the end of the wheel to undo the tire, how it's fitted. One guy will go in, grab the tire, pull it off of the car, and then there's another guy holding a new tire, a fresh tire, putting it onto the car, and then the guy with the pneumatic gun swoops in again and then drills on the nut on the end of the tire, on the end of the wheel. And then these jackmen set the car down on the ground, and then another guy pushes the button to make this red light turn green to say okay to go, and then the driver speeds off. They do all of that shit in 2.4 seconds. 2.4 seconds! How do they do it? It's insane. It's crazy. It's wild. So yeah, that's a pit stop. So these guys right now, I can tell, because they're wearing short sleeves, they're not in their full race gear. They're just practicing a pit stop. So probably the drivers, the normal drivers are not even in the car right now. It's probably like one of the pit crew that's driving the car at the moment. So they'll just like wheel it in, they'll push it in neutral, then they'll do their pit stop, and then they'll like push it back, and they'll do that like over and over to get practice in. All right, so the next stop. So this is one of the most famous drivers ever. This is Ayrton Senna. He was extremely famous in the late 80s, early 90s, multiple world champion. He was a Brazilian driver. He really took the racing world by storm. Probably some consider him to be the greatest of all time. If you look back in the glory days of the early 90s, I mean, you can't read about it without reading about Senna. Tragically, he died in a race around that time period. So, and it was really horrible too, because another driver had also died earlier in the weekend during I believe in the qualifying, and he was pretty distraught by it. And then only the next day he also got into a crash and passed away. So it was a really awful accident. So there's a lot of tributes out there, and a lot of statues and things like that. So this is another shot of a garage. So this is the Aston Martin garage, and this is just a neat shot. It's like a cool shot of the car. You've got this like array of lights shining down from the ceiling, and again, like this array of lights, these computer monitors, all of these tubing and wiring and stuff that goes onto the car, all of this stuff is not part of the garage itself. This is all trucked in logistically by the teams. They bring all this in at the start of the weekend, and there's an entire crew that spends like a day just setting all this stuff up. So it's really insane, like how they transform these like little spaces into a garage that can like service these cars and provide the teams with everything they need to put the cars together, and if need be, put the cars back together if they explode out on track. It's crazy. And this is the view like facing out of the garage. So this car, the Aston, is about to go out. So this is one of the crew chiefs here. He's getting ready to direct the car to leave. He's just looking for traffic coming down the pit lane, because we don't want the cars running into each other. If you can see here, it's kind of small, but behind him, there's a whole pit wall. And what the pit wall is these are the most important people when it comes to the race. So they have a separate like pit wall construction out here by the racetrack, where you have the strategists, you have the racing engineers, you have sometimes the team principals or even the CEOs of the teams, and they're all outside of the garage, usually by the pit wall, because they are the most important members of the team in directing the drivers and the cars, and they have a great view of what's going on in the pit lane, and they can also view what's going on in the racetrack, and also like more mundane stuff like, oh, they can stick their hand out and see if it's raining or not. It's interesting because at least some of this is cosmetic too, right? Like the amount of lights and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think most of the lights here serve a purpose, but like if you've got like cool like LED strips on the walls, like we see that green there, and like the paneling being super shiny. I mean, it is brand and reputation, right? It's like the teams want to look cool. They don't want to look like they're cheap. They want to attract, you know, the high-end sponsors. They want to attract like the clientele that will drop, you know, thousands of dollars to come out for a race or hand over like millions of dollars to put their name on your car, right? So it's all a part of the big capitalist machine that is Formula One. And yeah, it's crazy because yeah, it is all like pretty for the camera, right? I mean, all of these shots, like they all look so cool, and a lot of that is because of the materials they're using and the high quality of the team uniforms and the branding and how it's all put together. I mean, Formula One is like a graphic designer's like dream, right? I mean, I was actually looking at the F1 branding guide the other night that was put together back for the latest iteration of the branding back in 2017. I'm like, this is awesome. It's like 200 pages long. It tells you like how to put, you know, like how to put things on signs, right? How to like arrange your logos, like where they should go on like your communications, things like that. It was just so cool. I find that stuff awesome. Yeah, they're putting makeup on a mechanic shop, basically. You got it. So this next shot, this is a really cool shot. So this is at a track called Monza. So Monza is in Italy. It's basically the temple. It's called the Temple of Speed. It's more or less Ferrari's home track. It's where every Ferrari fan wants to go and watch Ferrari win. So this is the crowd at the end of the race on the track. They're all waving these flags. So you see some Ferrari flags. You see a Brazilian flag, you know, depending on like where people came from. And here to the left, this is the podium. So Monza has a really interesting setup where they have the podium hanging over the track so that when the crowd is allowed onto the track at the end of the race, it's just a sea of fans cheering on their heroes on the podium here. And I think we have, looks like Sebastian Vettel, who was at Ferrari at the time. It looks like he took the win, and then Lewis Hamilton next to him for Mercedes, and I can't see who the third driver is, but Vettel and Hamilton there. I don't even know what year that is. Probably like 2016 or 17 or something like that. So this is really cool. Just a really cool shot there with all the crowd. So when I went to Montreal and at the end of the race, we did get to actually walk on the track. So I was at the very end of the park. So we were at like the very northern tip, and the finish line was like more toward the southern part of the island, so we got to like walk all the way down like the straightaways and things like that, and it was really cool being in a sea of like thousands of fans all walking together, like wanting to see the cars and, you know, celebrate the end of the race. So that was really cool. That's probably my favorite moment from going to a race is going to that race is just like walking with all the fans down the track and just, you know, kind of experiencing the afterglow of the race and being there with everybody. So this shot here, this is cool. So this is the starting line. God, the name is escaping me right now, where all the cars are lined up on the something. God, it's really escaping me at the moment. Sorry. Well, anyway, this is at the starting line. This is where all the cars are lined up. So all the teams are like around their cars. They're getting ready for the start. So this is probably about 20 minutes beforehand, before the race is starting. So the mechanics are basically doing their last minute checks on the cars. There's like VIPs that will walk through here. They get to kind of like let the really high-end VIPs and sponsors and stuff like walk through and look at the cars like one last time before they go off into the race. There's interviews that are going on here. A lot of media is happening at this time. So it's like, it's a really big spectacle. Everyone's getting amped for the race. And then basically when, you know, it's time to go, all the teams, they grab their stuff and they walk off to the sides of the track like really quickly. And it's really eerie to kind of see, because it's like suddenly you have all these like buzzing bees of people like all around the cars, and then all of a sudden they're just like gone, like they're off to the sides, and all you have left on the track is 20 cars. So it's a really interesting sight. The starting grid, that's what it's called. Yeah. So this is what's called the starting grid. because it's a grid of cars. They're all lined up. So this is like a scene of a crash in Formula One, and nobody was hurt in this accident. It's actually pretty rare these days that drivers get hurt in a crash because of the safety measures are so good. So I can talk a lot about the safety measures. So this is a car from Haas Automotive. So Haas is a company, an industrial company that makes CNC machines. And the guy who owns the company, he wanted to start a Formula One team. So he started a Formula One team when Formula One wasn't doing very well, and they like kind of needed more money and they needed more teams. So he kind of snuck in at a really good time. Haas is like a much lower end team. They don't have a lot of money to spend. They don't hire a lot of people, but some years they can be a little competitive towards the bottom of the grid. So in this year in particular, they had a couple of rookies that were driving for the team. So one was Russian Nikita Mazepin. He was a real piece of shit, and he's not in Formula One anymore because of the war of aggression with Russia and Ukraine. They got rid of him really quick once that war started, thankfully. The other driver on the team at the time was Mick Schumacher. So Mick Schumacher he's a great kid, but he made a lot of mistakes. And he's the son of Michael Schumacher, who is another one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time. So he had a lot of like promise behind him and sponsorship deals and things like that. So Haas needed the money. They thought he would be like a good fit for the team, but unfortunately he crashed the car so many times he cost them like millions of dollars in damage, and they got rid of him after 2 seasons, unfortunately. So unfortunate for Mick, but you know, he was trying really hard, but you know, the car really wasn't something he could get a big handle on. So what's happened here is this car, it's I believe I remember the incident where he hit like a curb and then he spun out and the road was a little bit wet. This is in Monaco. So it's the streets of Monaco. There's not really anywhere to go. So if you spin out and you crash into a wall, your car is obliterated basically. So he was carrying enough speed that he went into the barriers here sideways. And these barriers are what they call safer barriers or something. I'm really forgetting all the names right now. I'm sorry. But he hit the barriers. And these barriers are really cool because they're set up specifically for the race. And you can see they're kind of foam looking, and they have extra foam padding behind there, those red things there. So it's another layer. And what it is these barriers absorb a huge amount of energy, so that when a car goes into them, the majority of the energy that the car is carrying dissipates into these barriers and it absorbs it. So it's almost like a giant pillow. And the car, you can see it's broken in two here. This is actually by design. So by design, this car has broken in two. And the reason for this is because a couple of years earlier, there was an extremely bad crash with a driver named Roman Grosjean, who was also a driver for Haas at that time. I watched this race live. So it was the start of the race. The cars had already gone a couple of corners, and then they had a big straightaway, and Roman had bumped into another driver, and he shunted off diagonally into the barriers. And the barriers weren't these soft kind of barriers. They were like the metal barriers you see on the side of the highway. He went right through the barrier at 180 miles an hour. The car literally exploded into a fireball. I saw the fireball. They cut the feed because that's what they do in the broadcast. They don't want to show you anyone, getting killed or getting seriously hurt. So they cut the broadcast and they only showed like what was going on with the other cars at the time. And there was just this gigantic fireball, and we didn't know for like a good 5 or 10 minutes like what was going on, if anyone had gotten hurt. And then all of a sudden we saw Roman out of the car. He was walking, he was with the medical team, he was fine. But what had happened was, when the car went through the barrier, it carried such force and such energy that the metal had sheared part of the car off, and the fuel tank had ignited, and the fuel was just like exploding into flames. So thankfully Roman, because of his flame suit that he's wearing and because of his gloves and his helmet and everything, he had about a 30 to 35 second window where he was able to jump out of the car under his own power and literally throw himself out of the fireball back over the barriers and the medical team was able to like pull him the rest of the way. So he likes to be nicknamed the Phoenix because he literally rose from the fire and the ashes, and it was probably one of the craziest moments that I've ever seen in a sporting event. But some of the redesign of the car that came from that was they wanted the car to break in two so that the fuel lines wouldn't be ruptured, and that would never happen again. Because at that time they had thought, oh, there's no way we would ever have another fire or another explosion like that, and clearly they're wrong. So it's really good they designed it so that now the car will break in two rather than suffering a puncture where the fuel lines could get ripped off and then explode. So that's what's going on here. And it looks like Mick is still in the car here. This guy's a race marshal. So the marshals are volunteers. Marshals stand on the side of the track and they provide a number of services. Some of them radio communicate back to the people running the race, whether it's like the FIA or the stewards or the race directors, all those folks. There's a lot of people involved in running a race. They could also be fire marshals, so they're marshals that literally have fire extinguishers and have training to put out fires in cars. And they'll do other tasks like checking the drivers to see if they're okay before the medical team gets there. The medical team usually swoops in within a few seconds from their own car. So this marshal, he's had the go-ahead from the race control that he's okay to go onto the track and check and see if the driver is okay. So in this case, the driver was okay. And the marshals, after the car is towed away or lifted off the track with giant machines, they'll usually get giant brooms and sweep the debris off the track. So usually what happens is the race is neutralized. They'll either do a safety car or they'll do like a red flag if it's a particularly bad accident like this one, and they'll bring all the cars into the pit lane and stop the race for a few minutes while they clean everything up. So this is another cool shot. This is also another Alfa Romeo, and this is one of the drivers. This is Kimi Räikkönen. Kimi was in the sport for a very long time. Great driver. He was a world champion for Ferrari. And he's just getting ready before the race starts. You can tell this was still during the pandemic, where folks were still having to wear masks and stuff while they're on the track. And he's just getting suited up, getting his race helmet on, and getting ready to go out and get in the car and get onto a race. That's another cool shot. Back here, you can see a cart with tires on it. That's what these green stripe things are. So I've talked about tire blankets before. These green stripe things are the tire blankets. So they've got all the tires here in this rack wrapped up in these tire blankets, and they're plugged into a generator unit that's feeding heat into the tire blankets to keep the tires warm. And that's what you can see here on the tires on the car are the tire blankets. So they're kind of named here. This one's front left. This one will say front right. So everything has a name. Everything has a place. They look really comfy, don't they? This is another shot of the paddock with the motorhomes and the like the VIP crowd in there. And you can see they're like multiple levels too. Like this motorhome here, it's like 3 stories high. So they got like a first floor where they have the hospitality, second floor, which is offices, and then third floor here where they have even more hospitality, it looks like. So they have like another bar on top here with chairs and places to relax. So I don't know. If I hit the lotto one day, I want to go to the paddock and, chill in one of these places. I think that would be a lot of fun. This is a shot of one of the Alpine drivers. This is probably, this is Pierre Gasly. So he's a driver for Alpine. This is him getting out of the car. So getting in and out of the car, it's very important. The drivers, as part of the safety regulations, have to take a test at the beginning of every season when they have a new car, where they have to escape from the car within a certain number of seconds. I think it's 10 seconds. It's like 10 or 12 seconds. And what they have to do is they have to go from being totally buckled in to unbuckling themselves, taking the steering wheel, which you can see here, off of the steering column. There's a release for it. Taking that, putting that on the car itself, and then jumping out of the car all within 10 to 12 seconds, because that's what's required regulation wise in getting out of the car. So if the driver is unable to get out of the car within that time frame, then they can't race. And that's not just Formula One, that's actually a lot of other racing series as well. So if you go in and you drive for like an official racing series that's, I think, regulated by the FIA, they make you escape from the car within a few seconds as a test. They have to take the steering wheel. Yeah. So in order to get in and out of the car, the steering wheel is actually like in your way. So like you can't really get out of the car unless you take the steering wheel off and then take it out of the car, because it's so cramped on the inside, like how tight everything fits together. One thing I didn't mention, so safety wise, when I was talking about, crashes and things like that, this part of the car, so if you follow my mouse here, so they have this like air intake up top, and then if you follow it down and you go like this, basically, let me drag it. It's kind of like this section of the car. This is called the monocoque. Not that kind of cock, but this MONOCOQUE, the monocoque. So what the monocoque is, it's like one very extremely tough single piece of machined metal that is designed to be what they call the survival cell for the driver. So it's supposed to be the hardest part of the car. Nothing should be able to penetrate it or destroy it. If the car flips upside down, this piece here, which is the top of the monocoque, and also the halo device, which is this ring that goes around the driver and in front of them, is supposed to be able to withstand basically anything. So when I talked about Roman going through the metal barriers, this halo device here is what saved him and protected him from getting killed, as well as, his flame suit protecting him from the fire. So this entire piece here is supposed to be like the main thing on the car that should never be destroyed or crumple or be damaged. So even if the entire rest of the car explodes or falls apart or flies off, this is what should keep the driver safe. So it's really kind of amazing, like how powerful and how well engineered parts of the car are, and why we haven't had any deaths in Formula One since 2014. Another view of the paddock. So these are the motorhomes. This gives you a better idea of like the size of the motorhomes. So this is at a track called the Red Bull Ring. This is in Austria. It's absolutely gorgeous. You see the Austrian mountains in the background. The track is in this sort of basin here. The echoes from the engines just echo through the mountains. It's just really, really cool. This is one of the tracks that's my favorite to watch. It's also my favorite to drive on in iRacing, and it's probably one of the top tracks I want to go do someday when I travel to go see another race. So this is Red Bull's home race. This is the Red Bull Ring, because they're an Austrian team, Austrian tie. And these are the motorhomes here. So you can see Ferrari's motorhome here. It seems like it's in multiple pieces. You have Red Bull's motorhome here, and also like the main track building in the paddock that is all Red Bull and AlphaTauri branded as well. And you can see like bits of the track up here. So like you have the grandstands up here. You can see some of the grandstands, some of the advertising up there, and then like, parking lot back here for the drivers and VIPs and those like working in the team and the track and stuff. This is a this is a photo of cars in the wet. So they do drive in the rain. And when the cars drive in the rain, they have their own sets of tires. So tires in Formula One, when they're in the dry, they have 3 sets. They have softs, mediums, and hards. And these are compounds of the tires. So soft compounds are, as they sound, like softer, more rubbery. They stick to the track better. They generally make the cars go faster because they have better grip, but they also fall apart the quickest. So you can get, like, depending on the length of the track, 10 to 15 to 20 laps on the soft tires, depending. The next step up from that is the mediums. That's the medium tire compound. They're a little bit harder. They're more of like a mid-range. They'll take you further, but you probably won't be able to run the whole race on the mediums. And then the hard compound tires, those are the hardest. They're probably going to make the car go the slowest, though that really depends on the track conditions. but they'll also last the longest. So when the teams are racing around the track, really they want to get as much distance out of their tires as possible, but they also want good speed as well. So there's a lot of strategy in the races around tires, whether they're using the soft, the mediums, or the hards. There's also rules around tires, like the teams have to make at least one tire change in the race to keep the strategy interesting. They can't go the entire race on just one set of tires. So that means they have to make at least one pit stop. So pit stops are very important to strategy in the race. There's a lot of things in there like overcutting, undercutting. I don't really want to get into that because that's really track dependent. But I was talking about wet tires. There's two sets of wet tires in Formula One right now. There's the inters, which are the intermediate tires. Those are the tires you put on when it's like just starting to rain, or it's not very wet, it's not pouring rain. It's like just enough grip from those tires to keep it from sliding off into the wall. But you know, it's not the same as the what they call extreme wets, the extreme wet tires. The extreme wet tires are what you want to be using when you have a situation like this, when there's just like a downpour, the track is basically underwater, and you need as much grip as possible. So the extreme wets are designed to, you know, take in as much water through the grooves as possible and then spit them out the back end and get the drivers as much track as they can get on the track. So that's basically the tires in a nutshell. There's 5 compounds of tires in all right now. So it's softs, mediums, hards for dry, and then inters and extreme wets for the rain. And this is a prior season of Formula One. You can kind of see the cars look a little bit different than what you saw before. They're a little bit smaller. They have these funny front wings. So this was before the cars entered in their like current phase of design, which is the what we call the turbo hybrid era, where the cars are all using hybrid engines with power units and energy recovery and all this really complicated stuff. This is back when Formula One was still using only internal combustion engines. So this is from the internal combustion era. This is a great photo of Carlos Sainz in Ferrari. This is him stepping out of his car at the end of the race. So looks like he's won the race. He's come in. He's removed his padding around him in the cockpit. He's already taken out his steering wheel and put it back, and he's standing in front of the car, giving a number 1 because it looks like he won the race. So big deal to win the race. Getting a lot of cheers from the fans and the crowd there. We have behind that, it looks like we have the marshals back here. So the volunteers that are in charge of making sure the race goes all according to plan. You may also have like some media back here. And then also you can see like a shot of the medical center. So that's really close by. That's where the medical team is stationed in case anything goes wrong. This is another great shot from McLaren. So this is Lando Norris in the center. He's one of the drivers. He's gotten P2 in the race. And next to him is his teammate, Oscar Piastri, who got P4. So this is a good amount of points for the team. So I'm sure the team was very happy. There's a number of familiar faces in here to me. There's a lot of the pit crew and engineers, everyone that's working in the team, the whole team that's at the track at the end of the race. This guy here, this is Zach Brown. He's the CEO of McLaren. He goes to almost all the races. He's very involved with the day-to-day operations of the team and working with the sponsors. And he's been a really cool addition to the Formula One paddock. You know, he's taken over McLaren and basically trying to bring it back to its former glory. And he's actually an American. McLaren's a British team, but he's an American who's, you know, really delivered for McLaren and is bringing it back to the top, which is really exciting because McLaren's my team. This is another shot of the pit wall. So this is when I was pointing out the pit wall earlier. These are like the most important guys that are sitting there at the race. So they have like all these computer screens with all this like, let me zoom in here. Crazy amounts of data showing them like TV cameras, like what's going on with the race, where the cars are out on track, like what the weather's like what, you know, messages from race control and all sorts of data and stuff so that they can effectively strategize and figure out like what they need the drivers to do and what they need the team to do and, you know, make split-second decisions. This guy here. He was the team principal of AlphaTauri, which is Red Bull's sister team. This is Franz Tost. He is no longer with the team. He retired last year, but he was pretty big deal in the paddock for many years. Is that the end of them? Yeah, that's my last one. Okay, so those are some cool photos about F1. So I don't know, all that stuff I talked about, it's like all like really interesting things that I like about it, and the culmination of like me learning about the sport since I got into it in like 2020. So it's been a lot of fun like learning about all this stuff, and I like telling you guys about it. So let's go on to our next session. We're gonna talk about memes. We're gonna talk memes. So I've been given a few memes by a good friend of mine. I was actually EFAF, eHanby. And I got a little collection of memes here we can talk about and review, and I can talk about like what they mean, right? Because I know you guys don't know what any of this means. So the first one we got this Bernie meme here, and he says, I am once again asking, why did we not also cheat? So there's a long history of cheating in Formula One, unfortunately. A lot of it gets swept under the rug. I'm sure there's like plenty of stories and incidents of cheating that have never come to the forefront. Most recently, Red Bull broke the cost cap that was set into place by like, I don't know, something like $2 million or something like that. And there was a lot of memes around this because they came out saying something like, oh, you know, like we need to pay our staff, like we have a lot of catering bills, yada yada. And like the community like latched onto the catering excuse like really hard and was like, oh, so your drivers just eat like $2 million worth of sandwiches in a year? Okay, all right. You know, so this is sort of in reference to that. So this is the McLaren logo. So it's McLaren saying, why did we not also cheat? Because it seems like all the other teams are kind of cheating all the time, but McLaren is normally seen as more of a goody two shoes. Like they kind of call out other teams for their bullshit. They haven't been caught cheating, so it's assumed that they don't cheat. Who knows? So that's what this meme is about. So I will say, I'm gonna give this meme a rating. I have a few ratings here. I'm gonna give this a true. We're gonna mark this true because this is true. Why doesn't McLaren just cheat? If everyone else is cheating, why don't they cheat? All right, next meme. Another Bernie meme. All right, so we got in the first panel, this is Lando Norris. He's a driver. He's gone green, purple. So what this is these are sector times. So every track in Formula One is split out into 3 sectors. So they do like the first third of the track is sector 1, the second third of the track is sector 2, and the last third of the track is sector 3. So it's like easy to kind of measure like how a driver is doing through each of those sectors. So green in a sector means that the driver has improved upon their own time. Yellow means that they're slower than, I believe it's either slower than they were before or slower than the fastest time. Yeah, slower than their fastest time in that sector. And then purple is they've gone faster in that sector than anyone else on the track. So this is Lando. He's improved on his time in sector 1, he's improved on his time in sector 2, and then he's gone the fastest out of everyone on track in sector 3. So he's pulled ahead of Max Verstappen, who's generally the benchmark for the fastest person on track. And he might just get pole by the end of qualifying. So Bernie's like, holy shit. And then in this one, we see Max Verstappen. He's improved upon his sector 1 time, but he's gone slower in his sector 2. He's gone slower than his fastest sector 2 time. How's he going to do in sector 3? It looks like Lando might take pole. So Bernie's getting really excited here. And then by the very end of qualifying, Max has gone on pole and he's already 2.5 tenths up Lando. So this is more common than it should be in Formula One, where Max Verstappen ends up being the fastest on track, even if he sucks in one of his sectors. So I'm going to mark this one as an ouch. This is an ouch for me because too many times have I seen Lando Norris gone really well in a qualifying. He's done the lap of his life, and then Max just fucking puts him in the dumpster again. So it's unfortunate. That's an ouch. This next one, this is Charles Leclerc. He's the driver for Ferrari. He's a driver for Ferrari. Leclerc introducing himself at group therapy sessions. I have the longest contract in the history of Scuderia Ferrari. The meme about this is Ferrari has not done well in recent years. Ever since the years of Michael Schumacher back in the early 2000s, where they were just dominating the world championship, they really haven't been doing very well for one reason or another. Partly because they did cheat at one point and then they got slapped on the wrist and they couldn't cheat anymore using the very specific fuel burning technique they were using. So that kind of set their car back. They've had mismanagement, like multiple layers of the team are just kind of like their heads are in the clouds. So I don't know. It's really debatable stuff, but basically they haven't been doing well in recent years. And Charles has been kind of the poster boy for Ferrari for several years now. He's supposed to be their golden child, their world champion. He's the one who's going to beat Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. He's going to bring home the championship for Ferrari, and it just hasn't been the case. It really just hasn't been the case. They haven't really gotten their act together. They haven't gotten the car totally right. They're up there. They're competing for second and third, but they're really just not, they're not bringing home the championship. They really just can't compete with Red Bull right now. So there's a lot of pain surrounding Charles. he really gets in his own head. He's very much a beating up on himself. Like, he calls himself stupid a lot. He says, you know, oh, I made a mistake, it's totally my fault. He's very much a sad boy. Yeah. And it's funny because like he's also a very handsome boy as well, so he has a lot of fans that latch onto him, and they're like, they want to baby him, right? They're like, it's okay, Charles, it's okay, maybe next year. Pobrecito. All right, so this meme, this is another ouch. That's another ouch. Next meme. People watching F1 trying to justify everyone's actions. Shut the fuck up. It's not about who's a good person. It's about who's your favorite tax evader. So everyone in Formula One is rich. Some are richer than others. Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, they both had like private jets at certain points. I think Max still owns his own private jet. They are extremely rich. They have tons of sponsorship deals. It's crazy. Some of the other drivers don't pull in quite as much money, but they're all like up there in terms of like where we are down here, right? And when we say tax evader, what we mean is basically all of the drivers live in Monaco. Everyone has an apartment in Monaco. That's because Monaco is basically a big tax haven. The Principality is basically where millionaires go to live because they don't really pay much in the way of taxes. And like, who doesn't want to live in Monaco? It's on the Mediterranean. The weather's nice. It's beautiful, right? You get to park your yacht there. And it's in Central Europe, so it's not very far to get everywhere. So yeah, basically all the drivers are tax evaders and they're silly little millionaires. Next meme. Oh wait, I didn't rate it. Yeah, it's in our true. I think we're just waffling between true and ouch right now. I promise we'll get to the other ones. All right, next meme. Hide the pain, Harold. It's lights out and back to bed. So for Americans, most of the races, I mean, the races are all around the world. We now have races in Asia, we have races in Europe, and we have races in the Americas as well. The races in the Americas are great because they happen at like afternoon times and evening times. They're really good. Majority of the races happen in Europe. So in European time zone, for those of us on the East Coast, it usually happens that the race is around 9 or 10 a.m., which is awesome because like I can just wake up, make my breakfast, sit down and watch a 2-hour race, and then by noon I'm ready to like get on with my day and go do something else for the rest of the day. For West Coast, it's a little bit different. West Coast, y'all are getting up at like 6 a.m. or even 5 a.m. depending, and you're watching the race, and then it's like by the end of the race it's like, oh, it's 8 a.m. again, I'm tired, I'm gonna go back to bed. so that's what it's lights out and back to bed means. And the it's lights out is the famous phrase that the lead commentator for Formula One, his name's David Croft. He goes by Crofty. His famous catchphrase when the lights go out at the start of the race is, "It's lights out and away they go." So you'll probably see that around a bit if you hang around me. So I'm gonna rate this one. I mean, it could be a true, but this is a Lamau, because this is a Lamau for me. Because it's just, I don't know, it's just funny. Like, wake up, watch the race, go back to bed. All right, next meme. What the fuck? So this is Max Verstappen, world champion. When he won the world championship in 2022, they had this like really weird little private room off to the side. So what happens is, so okay, let me pull back. So when the drivers pull into Parc Ferme, they line up according to the order in which they won. So first, second, and third place all pull up. They have these little cute little signs in front of them. They say first, second, and third, and then they get out of the cars. They go hug their team. They get weighed in at the scale, and then they take off their helmets and they do interviews, like short interviews with whoever is doing the interviews at the time. And then after they do the interviews, they go to what's called the cool down room. So the cool down room is like right there, like right in the grandstand. And it's like a little room where they can just like hang out together. They talk about like what happened in the race and just like take a chill pill for like a couple of minutes, drink some water, put on their fancy like Pirelli hats and stuff. And the weird thing was, for this one, off to the side of the one room they were in, I think it was in Suzuka in Japan, there's a really weird little room set up that was just like this throne and then like a screen, and that was it. And it was just like, okay, Max, now you have to sit down in this throne. We're gonna play this like 2022 world champion animation behind you, and you need to like smile for the camera. So he did that for all of about like 20 seconds, and he's like, all right, this is too fucking weird. And he just like stood up and left because it was just dumb. It just looked stupid and silly, and it was just like one of those like really cringy, over the top Formula One moments that like everybody loves, because it's just like, what the fuck? Like, why am I here? Like, why are they doing this? This is just dumb. So anyway, he got up, he stood up, and then they went off and they did the podium ceremony after that. But it was really funny at the time. So I'm gonna give this one a Lamau, because I like that one a lot. I thought that was like really cringy and funny at the time when I saw it. All right, next meme. All right, so this is Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri Bottas was he was a racing driver for Mercedes. He was teammates for Lewis Hamilton for several years. He never achieved the world championship, but he got to drive one of the best racing cars of all time, the Mercedes FW, whatever the heck, and was like, you know, pretty dominant. He was the second place guy, basically. He won a lot of races, but he never came close to Lewis, unfortunately. So this is the evolution of Valtteri here. So this is Valtteri at Mercedes in the middle. He's got a Heineken, and his one of his famous catchphrases is traditions. So he says traditions, and then he takes a swig of the beer, and then we've got other forms of Valtteri here. So this one on the left, this is Valtteri, I think, after he left Mercedes, and he's got a glass of wine here, and he's just like looking very, very Valtteri with the mustache. And on the right here, we've got Valtteri now in his Australian Bogan era, where he's like kind of more of a redneck Aussie era, with his Valtteri Bottas beer bottle and beer can and his mullet and all that. So it's just Valtteri being Valtteri. He's used to be really serious and like really in his own head, but I think he's just having fun now. He's just enjoying racing, enjoying what he does, and he's not taking things as seriously as he used to. He's got a very nice girlfriend now that's kind of a pro cross-country cyclist, so he does a lot of bicycling stuff during the off season and in between races and stuff. So that's like his main hobby is doing like cycling. So he's a good guy. So I'm gonna give this one a nice. That's a nice Valtteri meme there. Oh, and he's got his own gin as well. So he's a Finn who enjoys his booze like most Finns do. All right, this takes some explaining. So we've got a group of drivers up here that say, join us, Daniel. And we've got F1 driver Daniel Ricciardo down here. So Daniel Ricciardo originally started out as like one of the golden boys of Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen, and he was a multiple Grand Prix winner. He's a very likable, charismatic guy in the paddock. A huge amount of fans love him because A, he's handsome, B, he's charismatic, he's got a great smile, but he's also like, you know, a good driver as well, or he was a good driver. He made the jump out of Red Bull back when it was first becoming dominant because he didn't want to be number 2 to Max Verstappen, and he thought a change of pace would be good. So he changed teams over to Renault. He didn't do very well at Renault. He didn't do very well the first year, but the second year they started to improve. But then he jumped again. He went to McLaren after that. So he went to McLaren for a couple years and did not very well at all at McLaren. He did win one race, but the rest of the time he was struggling mentally. He couldn't figure out what was wrong with his own driving style or why the car didn't suit him. And he was really like kind of at his lowest by the second year of McLaren. And McLaren went as far as to basically pay out his contract so that he would just leave, because he was basically bringing the team down. Like, he wasn't doing very well, and they needed another driver in there. And that's when they got Oscar Piastri. So he took a year off from F1, but Red Bull wanted to bring him back into the fold. So Red Bull, you know, decided to give him another chance. And that's why he's at their sister team right now called Racing Bulls. But this was in his McLaren era here, where he was doing very poorly and was struggling like really hard. And these guys here, so these are all IndyCar drivers. So the joke right now is that if you retire from Formula One, if you can't hack it anymore, you go over to IndyCar. So we have here, this is Roman Grosjean on the left. He's the guy who exploded in the fireball. He went over to IndyCar after F1. I think this is Takuma Sato. He's another former F1 driver who went to IndyCar. I forget who this guy is. Can't remember this guy. Is this Juan Pablo Montoya? I can't remember. I always forget these guys. I'm really bad at remembering drivers outside of F1. But they're basically ex-F1 drivers that are, Ericsson, yep, and Juan Pablo Montoya. They're ex-F1 drivers that went over to IndyCar. IndyCar is the premier, like, American open wheel series. So you'll see that on weekends on, like, NBC and stuff. It's a really cool series. It's not quite as high level as Formula One, though they do go faster. IndyCar goes faster than F1 on the ovals. They'll reach speeds of up to like 220 miles an hour, where F1 cars are only going probably as fast as like 205 to 210 miles an hour at their fastest. But that's more of what they call a spec series, where the cars are not developed by the teams. Every team gets basically the same car. It's the same chassis supplied by one manufacturer, though they have two different sets of engines that they can use. So this meme, I don't know, this isn't really an ouch. This is more of a, I think this is like a true. This is like a true. I feel like Daniel has had his time in F1 at this point. He's really not hacking it anymore. He should probably go do something else. So I'm gonna call that a true. All right, next meme. Fellas, does your girl have the body of a Red Bull and the engine of a Mercedes? That's not your girl. That's the AMR 23. So this meme. So when Aston came out with this car, I think this was last season, there was like memes around like people that were analyzing like the look of the body, and the aerodynamics of the body were like very similar to what Red Bull had the previous year. And then the Mercedes engine, Mercedes supplies the engine for the Aston Martin, so they've got a Mercedes in there. I think this is a very self-explanatory meme, but that's kind of the joke. I don't know if it's very funny. I think it was probably more humorous at the time. Now I'm not enjoying it as much, so I'm just gonna give this one a nice. All right, next meme. Wait, you guys actually hate Lewis? I thought it was a joke. So Lewis Hamilton, being a multi-world champion, gets a lot of hate because he just kept winning. He kept winning over and over again. And that's because A, he's an amazing driver, and B, because Mercedes had the most dominant car of any era because of what
they developed prior to the like when the new regulations came around for the turbo hybrid era. And I think that for a lot of us fans, like, we don't really hate any drivers, we just prefer some drivers over others. But I think that, like, there's a lot of mainstream fans out there that are really just dickheads, and they just really hate on certain drivers. And I think Lewis catches a lot of shit, not just because he's a big winner, but, you know, he's black as well, right? So there's a lot of racial kind of hate there, unfortunately. And I think this meme kind of highlights just like, oh, haha, it's funny to hate on Lewis because he won so much, and now we finally get like a new winner like Max Verstappen. But you know, some people, you know, are really just joking, and some people really are just like, no, we hate that guy, right? So there's a lot of like vitriol in the fandom, unfortunately. I try and stay out of it. Never go on Instagram and look at an F1 post, because you'll just see the worst shit. Just don't. So I'm gonna put this one as a true. That's a true, unfortunately. All right, this meme. So this is so this is Sebastian Vettel. He's now retired from F1, but he's also one of the great champions of Formula One. He won the championship 4 times with Red Bull when they were first becoming dominant in the sport. And then he went on to Ferrari after that, and then Aston Martin before he retired. So this says Vettel fined €5,000 for FP1 scooter incident in Australia. So what's interesting about F1 is that the teams and the drivers can get fined for doing breaking the rules, basically. So if you're like going too fast in the pit lane, like there's a pit lane speed limit, you may be penalized in the race. But if it's not, if you weren't doing it like excessively, you may just be fined a certain amount of money. So the teams may be ordered to pay, like, okay, now the team has to pay €50,000 because the driver did this, or the team made this kind of mistake. Maybe they crossed the pit entry line illegally or something like that. Basically, they broke the rules, but they didn't break the rules hard enough to get a penalty in the race. This is another basically tax from Formula One and the FIA and all the governing bodies and those that run Formula One to squeeze more money out of the drivers and teams. So it's a big money-making, fining cycle. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre. But I just really like this headline because he's getting fined for some kind of scooter incident. Like he got on a scooter and went somewhere he shouldn't have, probably like onto the track or something like that, and they fined him €5,000 for it. So I think for me, this one's a Lamau, because it's definitely like a very like Sebastian Vettel thing to do. Breaking the law. All right, so the next meme is, oh, he drove himself on the track back to the paddock. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess he crashed out and then he drove himself back. He commandeered a scooter. Yeah. So this meme, tires degrading? Just say no. Your tires legally cannot degrade without your consent. So this is world champion Max Verstappen, and this is a Pirelli tire. Your tires legally cannot degrade without your consent. I guess this meme is just like, the tire's not going to degrade unless you say they're degrading or unless you drive them around the track. I don't know. It's a very silly meme. Yeah, I'm just gonna say, yep, that's true. That's true. All right, next meme. So we got a Dark Souls meme here. This is the Formula One Rolex Gran Premio del Made in Italy del Emilia Romagna. So the full names of the races can get kind of ridiculous sometimes, especially in Italy. So they usually have like the name of the sport, the main sponsor, the name of the race, and then maybe another sponsor on top of that, and then where the race is actually occurring, like the province or the state or the town. So it's all that together for this race in Italy. This race is abbreviated, it's commonly known as Imola. So everyone just calls it Imola. But if you're being a huge F1 meme lord, if you're on Formula Dank, our Formula Dank, which is like the main place for Formula One memes. Oh, sorry, it's an Elden Ring meme. I can see the Elden Ring tree in the background. They'll call it by the full name. They'll say like, oh, what? you'll say like, oh yeah, are you gonna watch Imola this weekend? They're like, oh, you mean the Formula One Rolex Gran Premio del Made in Italy Emilia Romagna Grand Prix? Yeah, I'm gonna watch that. So that's this meme. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just like so over the top. It just seems like you're wandering into a an Elden Ring like dungeon where you're gonna get fucked up by an elder god or something. So this one is this is a Lamau and also a True, but I think it's more of a Lamau. We'll make it a Lamau just because that name is just so over the top. All right, next meme. Me waking up at 6 a.m. on a weekend just for the start to be delayed. Yep, going back to the like West Coast, waking up at 6 a.m. for a race, and then like maybe it's raining too hard, or there's like an incident on track that happened, or they had to like clear something happened. You know, it may be another half hour or an hour before the race starts. So this guy's a little bit grumpy. So I'll just say this one's a true. It's true. It happens. Why are you here? I thought you were financially stable. And then you see this Aston Martin team jacket for 423 euro. That's not a joke. Like, team wear is fucking expensive, especially when it comes to like the jackets and stuff. So like, I have a couple of McLaren team merch, but I definitely got them as gifts, and they were gifted to me while they were on sale. So like at the end of the year, when the teams are trying to like offload their merch, they'll slash prices by half or 60%. Sometimes when a driver wins a race, they'll have a team celebration where they'll make certain drivers merch like 10 or 20% off. When I was in Montreal for the Canadian Grand Prix, I went to like the official one of the official like team outlets for like the merch, and it was like this price. It was like you walked in, it's like, oh, that's a $250 shirt right there, and you put it on, and it's like, it's really no different from any other fucking shirt. It's just the teams can charge that much because, you know, it's limited, and they can, right? So yeah, team merch, very expensive. Definitely recommend you just get stuff that's on sale at the end of the season, because it's still good. Unless the team is totally changing their branding or colors, like, it's still fun to wear. So I have a nice McLaren raincoat and a McLaren hoodie that I like a lot. Oh, so that's an ouch. That's definitely an ouch. We found a Mercedes hat at a vintage show. Nice. Yeah, and when people go to the track, like, they still wear the old merch. Like when I was in Canada, I saw like a Ferrari fan. There are a lot of Ferrari fans that had like jackets from like the 90s or the early 2000s when like Michael Schumacher was big and all that. So that's good stuff. Like, if you take care of it, it's worth wearing. All right. If a rivalry lasts longer than 7 years, then you are no longer just rivals. You are gay. So fans in the scene are like any other fans, right? Like, we love our rivalries, but we also love our like forbidden, you know, secret gay relationships as well, you know, right in our slash fix and all that. So these are just some famous, star-crossed lovers, basically. So these are like some famous rivalries. So like, what do we got here? Like Lewis and Alonso, when they were both at McLaren together. We've got Lewis and Alonso again. Who else we got? Are they all Lewis and Alonso? I think they're all Lewis and Alonso. Yeah. Yeah, they've been in the sport together the longest out of anyone else at this point. Lewis has been there since 2007, and I think Alonso's been there since 2005, and they're both still racing. So they're the old guard. They've been in the sport together forever. Definitely longer than 7 years, yeah. When was F1 established? 1951, I think, or 1952. So it was like a series of Grand Prix races, and then they kind of combined them together into a world championship. And I think back then it was only like eight or 10 races in total. And I think they were pretty much all in Europe. Oh, so that meme, that is a that's a nice meme. That's a nice meme. We like the long-term rivalries. All right, this one. So we got Andretti, Cadillac, and then Gordon Ramsay going, finally, some good fucking freedom. So one of the things that's going on in Formula One right now is Andretti, who is a huge motorsports team in America. They have cars in pretty much every American motorsport. They're a massive, massive company. They want to get into F1. They've been trying to get into F1. The patriarch of Andretti, Mario Andretti, he was in F1 back in the day, back in the 70s. And his son runs the team, and his son really wants to bring American motorsport into F1. F1 is basically trying to block him any way they can. The reason for this is when I talked about how the constructors teams are competing against each other for a slice of the pie. So whoever comes out on first gets the most money at the end of the championship, and then second and third and so on. If they let in an 11th team into Formula One, they're going to have to give them a cut of the pie too. So the cut of the pie at the top and from everyone else is going to become smaller. They don't want to lose that money. There's no incentive for them to allow another team into the sport. The fans, though, the fans are like, no, we want more teams. We want more cars. You only have seats for 20 drivers. We'd like to see seats for 22 drivers. We'd love to have an 11th team. We want to see more competition. American motorsport fans definitely want to see an American team that isn't Haas actually like bring the fight and do well in the championship. So really there's a lot of back and forth right now. Andretti is still full steam ahead. So the FIA at this point has more or less approved their application, but Formula One itself has not. They're trying to fight them at every step. But Andretti has already like made a new HQ in the UK where they're going to have their base of operations for Europe. They've already like built a car, like an F1 car, for the next couple of years. So they're really like ready to go. It's just, the negotiations are ongoing. Cadillac is going to be their main engine supplier. So they want to bring in their own engine supplier. Cadillac would be a huge boost in Formula One because right now there's only 4 engine suppliers out of the 10 teams. So I think it's Mercedes, Mercedes engines, Ferrari engines, Honda, and who's the last one? I forget. The difference is they are approved to race FIA, but not approved to be seen in the media, so they could race actually. Yeah. So the thing with F1 that's like really complicated is it's not just one company running the show. It's actually several different companies. So the FIA, which is the regulating body, they give their approvals, but Formula One Media, which controls like all of the media and the money and everything that goes in and out of Formula One, is the other like big entity controlling things. And on top of that, there's also Liberty Media, which is the investment like parent company that actually owns Formula One, the brand itself as well. So there's all these different like bodies that like have to work together to make the thing work, and sometimes they get at each other's throats and they don't agree on things. So there's a lot of politicking, there's a lot of power struggles. It's really pretty wild. So that's another aspect of the sport that's like really fun for us fans, is like watching the weird politicking and stupid shit that goes on at the top, and really like seeing these like millionaires like make fools of themselves and like say stupid things. So yeah, so this is Gordon saying we finally get some like a good American motorsports team in Formula One. So I'm gonna make this is a nice for me. I like this one. Nice. Sorry, I'm talking a mile a minute here. I'm like sipping water as we go. All right, next meme. F1 engineers, after making their car faster by 1 picosecond per lap after spending $69 trillion developing an upgrade. And we got Charlie here, Moist Critical, doing his woo. So really shaving off any time off of a car's lap around the track is something to celebrate. The amount of work that goes into just like the testing and the designing and the forming of like the aerodynamic pieces and how things work in the engine, and working out around how the rules require you to do things requires so much effort and so much collaboration and work behind the scenes with the teams that sort of like any gain and progress is something to call a win. So that's what this meme's all about. So I say this is a true But also it's a Lamau because I like when Charlie goes, woo! All right, so this is Lewis Hamilton. He's saying, "Oh shit, here we go again," like CJ from San Andreas. So Lewis spent basically almost the entire turbo hybrid era winning every single championship and winning. Like he was basically unstoppable. And then as soon as the rules and regulations changed in I think 2021, they changed how the cars were designed. So the formula changed. And the cars had to be redesigned. Unfortunately, Mercedes went with a really bad design and were kind of crap to start with when the rules changed. And basically through the last couple of seasons, 2 to 3 seasons, Lewis has just been miserable. He's like, the car sucks. They're not listening to me. They're not doing what they need to do. I'm so sick of this. So actually early this year, Lewis announced he's going to Ferrari next year. He's leaving Mercedes. So he's been with Mercedes forever. It was kind of a shock to everybody because they thought like he would basically stay in Mercedes until he retired. But yeah, so this meme was when the car sucked and he was just like, oh, well, another week where we suck again. So he's not been in good shape the last couple of years, unfortunately. I'd love to see you play a GTA. That'd be so funny. Dude, I fucking love GTA. I've been a big GTA fan since 3. I love San Andreas. Vice City was good. 4 was amazing. I loved 4. I bought an Xbox 360 just to play GTA 4. Well, really was play GTA 4, Mass Effect, and Tales of Vesperia, but mostly GTA 4. And then when 5 came out, I played the hell out of 5 too. So I love 5. So I'm a big GTA fan. I'm really excited for 6. I really love the trailer that came out. I think the world looks great. The whole like Florida man shit, and I like the pro tag. She looks really cool. I'm really excited to play that. So if that comes out, I'm definitely gonna play. I'm definitely gonna play 6 on stream, I think. So this Lewis one, this one gets an ouch. Feels bad to be Lewis. All right, butt touch. So this is Max Verstappen and Lando Norris after a race. It looks like Max won the race. I forgot if Lando got P2 or P3, but they're on the podium together. Max and Lando are actually really good friends. They chat a lot and they do like sim racing together and stuff, and they go party together. So they're touching butts here, accidentally probably, but you can see there's a minus 50,000 euro here. So this is to represent like fines. So we were talking about fines earlier and how the drivers get fined for doing. Oh, they were touching each other's butts on purpose. Okay, all right. So they're butt touchers. That's fine. That's cool. I mean, who doesn't want to touch, your rival driver's butt, right? Anyway, so they're being fined $50,000 each for butt touching. So this is another like joke about how drivers get fined for stupid shit, basically, but also like, things that make sense. Like, if you go and you touch another driver's car while it's in Parc Ferme, you can be fined for that because everyone's supposed to be hands off the cars except for the scrutineers who check on the cars to see if anyone's cheating. So if a driver like walks up to another car and they touch a wing, there's been cases where that driver has been fined, a chunk of money. So this is Max and Lando getting fined for touching each other's butts. And I'm gonna put this one as a Lamau. I wish I had a cute. I should have made it cute because this is kind of cute too. All right. Next meme. Average car enthusiasts. Aston Martin. That's an Aston Martin V8 Vantage. F1 fan, safety car. So it's a very prestigious thing to be a car manufacturer and have your car be the safety car on the grid, because it means that your car goes really fast and it gets a lot of attention because it, leads the field when it gets called out if there's an incident on track. And yeah, it's just like, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to be a safety car. And for the last couple of years, the Aston Martin has been the safety car in Formula One. Oh, and there's another part down here. Latifi in the wall made with pneumatic. Okay. I'm going to give this one a nice. Yeah, it's a very fancy safety car. the drivers will always complain that the safety car is not going fast enough, but like they're generally flooring it and going like 140 miles an hour. So usually it's just the drivers complaining about their tires getting cold because they're not going fast enough. But I mean, the point of a safety car is you're supposed to go slow so that, you know, you don't crash into and kill somebody. All right. This is Fernando Alonso, that two-time world champion. Fernando wishes you a chaotic, silly season. So when the drivers' contracts come up, or a driver leaves a team and goes to another team, or leaves the sport entirely, it triggers what we call the silly season. So a silly season is where the drivers all start swapping seats, or you get new drivers coming into the sport, or you get drivers leaving the sport and other new drivers are coming in. It's like, it's basically chaos. Silly season is chaos because sometimes you'll have a year where half the drivers on the grid, their contracts are up. So a lot of drivers, they don't get very long-term contracts unless they're like really amazing, like a Max Verstappen, where he's got a contract, I think, until 2028 right now. Most drivers get a 2-year contract. Sometimes, if they're not tested yet, they might get a 1-year contract. And sometimes like it's a 2-year plus 1. So it's like an option to extend if certain conditions are met. And there's always a million clauses in these contracts too. So it's like, if you really suck and you really fuck up and you have a 3-year contract, you might be gone by the first year if you really screw up, because the team can just like point to a clause in the contract and go, well, you didn't meet what you needed to meet and you really sucked, so bye. And they can just cancel your contract. So the reason for Fernando holding the sign is he's sometimes the biggest instigator of a silly season. Like he's kind of a troll, basically. Like he'll leave a team, go to another team, and he's still very desirable because he's a very good driver, very reliable. You know what you're getting when you get Fernando. So like he kind of has weight to throw around, and he's bounced around so many teams since he started. He started in Renault, he went to McLaren, he went to, I don't know, he went to like 5 other teams. He's at Ferrari, he's been in Ferrari, he left the sport entirely, he came back, he's in Aston Martin. Like he's just he went back to Renault for a bit when it turned into Alpine. He's just like been all over the place. But yeah, basically he's been the trigger of quite a few silly seasons, and even like his involvement with other drivers has kind of triggered some silly seasons going on. So that's this meme. So I'm gonna give that a true. That's true. Fernando wishes you a chaotic, silly season. All right, next meme. Daniel Ricciardo here on the left, hype for Raw Seek, and then Max Verstappen asleep over here, the actual race. So Raw Seek, let me explain Raw Seek. So Ferrari put out a social media post like a couple of years ago, and it was very strange because it had this really cool photo of the car, and it was like all red and black, and it looked neat. And the typography that they put on the image was supposed to say race week, but they put in the spacing in between RA and CE, so it looked like raw, and then below it, it's supposed to say week in one line, and they had a space between WE and EK, so it looked like 2 blocks, one next to each other. The one on the left said RAWE, like raw, and the one on the right said Seek, like CEEK. So what was supposed to say race week actually said raw Seek. And it was just like, everyone's like, what the fuck is Raw Seek? I don't understand. So we all just started like memeing on Reddit about Raw Seek. So Raw Seek is code word for race week. So this is like us as fans being hype for race week, Raw Seek. But then the actual race comes along, and then like sometimes it's boring. Sometimes a Formula 1 race can be boring because it's just like, okay, everything went as expected. The Max Verstappen won the race. The usual suspects got second and third, right? Like not that anyone wants a crash to happen, but like nothing weird happened. No crashes happened. No cars like like shat out and like, they had to pull off. The reliability was perfect. No one had a messed up pit stop. Like nothing went wrong. Everyone just kind of raced around the track and nothing happened for 2 hours. And that's sometimes what the actual race is like. So fans, we always get excited for a race week, but sometimes, you know, you get to Sunday and it's just like, all right, I guess that was a race, and then you just kind of go about your day. So they can't all be bangers, unfortunately. So I'm going to rate this one as a true. Yeah, and EFAF is referencing Hambot Ver. So Hambot Ver was a meme for a bit during the when we first got into F1 during the pandemic in 2020. Hamilton and Bottas at Mercedes, the Mercedes car was so dominant. They were always getting first and second, and the Red Bull, Verstappen and the Red Bull, was usually always third because the Red Bull was not far behind. So the timing order on the left hand of the screen, where it lists like the initials of the drivers from fastest to slowest, was, or the race order rather, was started with Ham, and then below that Bot, and then below that Ver. So you had Ham, Bot, Ver, and it was like that basically almost every race of the season in 2020. Kind of funny, because it was really weird, like getting into F1 and being like, oh, I guess it's just the same three people that win every race. But, you know, whatever. It was still fun. It was still interesting to get into. All right. Oop. Next meme. So we got Captain Crunch here. Oops, all carbon. Captain Toto's Oops All Carbon. So this is Toto Wolff. He is the CEO and team principal of Mercedes. And the Mercedes car in the last few years has been mostly black colored, and it hasn't even really been painted that much. They're just using the black carbon fiber that the chassis is constructed to just like keep that black look. So one of the main complaints in F1 in recent years is because all the parts on the outside are like totally carbon fiber, and the teams don't want to add any paint onto the carbon fiber, which needs a special paint to begin with. It will also add weight to the car. So no team really wants to add extra weight to the car if they can help it. So a lot of the teams have been running like just bare carbon fiber on their chassis to keep the car fast, but it's also boring to look at. A lot of the fans have requested, like, please just like paint the whole car. Like, we don't care about carbon fiber anymore. It was cool at one point, but it's not that cool anymore. So that's what this is talking about. It's just like, oh, they reveal the car and it's like, oops, it's all carbon again. It's all carbon fiber, no paint. Okay. So I'm gonna give this one a Lamau. Because I like Toto there. Toto is the Captain Crunch captain there. All right, next meme. All right, Mercedes engineers, Red Bull aerodynamicists, Honda power unit, combined into Aston Martin. So this is Lawrence Stroll. He's a billionaire investor. He took over the what was once the Force India team, which went bankrupt because the previous billionaire got into huge money laundering and debt trouble with the Indian government and had to, give up the team. So Lawrence Stroll, billionaire investor, took his group of other billionaire investors, bought up the team, and rebranded it under the Aston Martin mark. And he's pouring his millions and millions and millions of dollars into attempting to make this the greatest team in Formula One. It hasn't been the case so far. They've had moments of short brilliance in car design, but they haven't really ascended to the top yet, and I don't know if they are, really. He spent a ton of money building a new facility in the UK to support the team, and that only just recently finished. So it has new facility, brand new wind tunnel, all this crazy shit. He's collecting engineers from Mercedes, which is, one of the top teams. He's collecting Red Bull aerodynamicists, the best in the business, and Honda power unit, which is what powers the Red Bull right now. And he's collecting them into the Infinity Stones to make the greatest team ever. But we'll see if it works out. It might take another couple of years before we start to see the fruits of that labor, the fruits of that money expenditure. All right. Oh, that meme. That's a true. That's a true. All right, so this meme. Bono, my tires are gone. I got no grip, man. Left front is dead. Losing power. I got no rear, man. And they combine to form the Megazord, which is fastest lap, Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis gets memed on a lot because he'll often come over the comms during the race to his race engineer. His race engineer is named Bono, and he'll talk to Bono and he'll be like, Bono, my tires are gone, you know, and say things like this, like, I got no grip, I'm losing power, I got no rear. And then he'll say these things like, basically he's whining that the car is falling apart, and then he pulls off the fastest lap of the race. So it's still up in the air whether he's like actually giving feedback or he's just pulling a like faux strategy, like false flag type of thing, where he's trying to make the teams like second guess like if he's actually falling behind or not. But for a lot of times when he says those things, he'll say it and you'll think like, oh no, Lewis is in trouble, and then he just pulls off the fastest lap of the race and wins the whole race. So it's just yeah, it's just Lewis being Lewis. So this one's a Lamau. That's a Lamau. Lewis is great. All right. This one, Carlos Sainz Sr. We got a rally car here, and Carlos Sainz Jr. Formula One in the gravel. So Carlos Sainz, who drives for Ferrari, Carlos Sainz Jr., he is the son of the famous Carlos Sainz Sr., famous Spaniard rally driver. He's probably one of the greatest rally drivers of all time. He is still competing even in his 60s, 70s in rally and still winning races. So really a huge legend, and his son being in Formula One is like a big deal because, you know, he's basically following in his father's footsteps, just in a different way. So this is funny because Carlos Sainz Sr. is driving the rally car through the dirt and the gravel, and then there's his son driving the Formula One car into the dirt and gravel and getting stuck there and not being able to get out. So oftentimes when Formula One cars go off a turn and they go off into the dirt and the gravel, it's hard to escape from the gravel because the gravel is designed to slow the car down and stop it from going into a wall. But if you get stuck in the gravel, usually you just spin the tires and there's no way to get out. So it's just like father, like son, basically. This one's a Lamau. I like that. All right, next one. All right, so this is a radio message from Carlos Sainz, and he says, "You don't think?" And then Ferrari, his race engineer, saying, "At the moment, we don't think." So this is in reference to Ferrari having really bad strategy the last couple of years, the last few years. The drivers are often seen as heroes calling their own strategy. So Carlos and Charles will often say, hey, we need to pit here, or hey, we should do this. And then the team will say something like, we are checking, or like, we'll get back to you with that. And they won't really give clear direction. Some races they've screwed up their pit stops where they told Charles to pit, and then at the last moment they said, no, don't pit, and Charles already pulling into the pits, and it's too late, and it loses them the race. So Ferrari's been really bad with strategy the last like handful of years. So this is just another example of one of those. And I'm gonna give this one an ouch, because their strategy has just sucked, and the drivers seem to know better, which is kind of scary. Because the team should have all the data available to them, and the drivers can only see what the drivers can see. All right, next meme. Greatest F1 royalties. So we have Senna and Prost here from McLaren in the 80s and 90s. We have Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton from Mercedes. And then we have Mattia Binotto and the Ferrari team versus Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. So again, the rivalry here, which is the Ferrari drivers versus the Ferrari team, because the Ferrari team just can't get their shit together. So this one, if I'm laughing out loud, I think it's a Lamau. So that one's a Lamau for me. A Lamau and an ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. All right, next one. Driver profile, Oscar Piastri. Favorite food, pasta. Guilty pleasure, chocolate. Fun fact, never used a comb. This one's just silly. I think when I saw this pop up on the TV, we just thought it was funny. It's just like stupid little silly facts about the silly little millionaires that go vroom. Never used a comb. That's a nice. All right, next one. So, this is a graphical representation of a racetrack, and this is the position of the drivers on those tracks. So you can kind of see they're like bunched up here. So you can see like we have a bunch of drivers on this side, a bunch of drivers here, a bunch of drivers kind of like backed up behind this here, and then another situation where these drivers are all backed up behind here. So the common thread through all these, this is Fernando Alonso. Fernando is known for, number one, being a troll, number two, being, a great world champion, but also like being able to like pull certain elements of the race in his favor and have great racecraft. So in this case, he's backing up an entire half of the field behind him. And this happens a lot where if you get like someone stuck behind you and they can't pass, then the guy behind them also can't pass because they would need to pass like two drivers at once, and so on and so forth. So if you have one guy in front that's really good at defending and everyone gets backed up behind him, then you're just going to back up half the entire field. So in this race, he's backed up half the entire field. In this race, he's backed up this many cars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And in this race as well, he's backed up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. So Alonso spent quite a few races just backing up the entire half of the entire grid and making them suffer, and they will never be able to catch up to the leaders at that rate. So I'm going to call this one this one's a Lamau, because it's always funny when this happens. Sometimes it makes the racing really boring though. All right, Vasseur. Ferrari made a step forward in terms of pain. So Ferrari switched team principals last year. They ousted Mattia Binotto, who was with the team for a very long time. He was a big engineer in the team and worked his way up the ladder to team principal, and no one was happy with the direction the team was going, so they got rid of him. And then they brought in Fred Vasseur. Fred Vasseur has been a team principal in F1 for a long time and the other teams. He was the principal for at least one of the junior series teams, which is Art, where he basically raised several of the drivers through the ranks. So like Lewis Hamilton drove for him originally when he was in his feeder series. And Vasseur is seen as someone who's kind of an unknown factor, whether or not he's going to bring Ferrari back to the top. Last year was still a struggle for him in his first year, but they made some steps forward. But this is just a funny headline where they edited. So Ferrari has made a step forward in terms of pain, because they're still not on top. They're still not winning. They're still having, reliability issues and bad strategy here and there. So it's still a work in progress for Fred, but it seems to be moving forward. It seems to be getting better. So we're all kind of looking forward to see what Fred can do with Ferrari. Oh, and that was I think that was just that's a nice, but also ouch, because Ferrari's still an ouch. All right, so this is Kimi Räikkönen. He was a world champion for Ferrari, and he is the last Ferrari world champion, and that's why he's holding this Photoshop sign that says still the last Ferrari F1 world champ, because Kimi still is the last Ferrari F1 world champ, and I think that was 2007 world champion, or 2008. One of those years is Lewis. I think Lewis was 2007 and Kimi was 2008. That one is that's a nice 2007. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I haven't watched the old seasons. All right. Yo, dog, we heard you like race weekend, so we put a race weekend in your race weekend. So I forget, is this Exhibit? Yeah, this is Exhibit, right? So Exhibit's memeing on this because recently in the last couple of years, they introduced the sprint race format into Formula One. So typically a Formula One race weekend, like I said before, is that Friday is practice 1 and practice 2. Saturday is practice 3 and qualifying, and then Sunday is the big race. They wanted to add in what's called sprint races, which is what some of the feeder series and other racing series out there do, where they have a shorter race earlier in the weekend that goes usually about like half distance or a third distance. So instead of going like 50 laps, it'll go like 24 laps. And it's basically just like another race, a shorter race, and that determines whoever wins that race and what place they come in determines the grid order for the race, the big race on Sunday. So a lot of people don't like this. Some people kind of like it. A lot of fans are kind of ambivalent to it. It's basically just more racing in the race weekend. So if you want to see more racing, great. If you think it kind of spoils the main event on Sunday, then you probably don't like it. I thought it was okay at first, but I'm kind of sick of it now. I don't really like it anymore. I think it's just too much to watch in a weekend. Some weekends I just want to watch qualifying and then the race. I don't really want to have to schedule my weekend around watching the sprint race as well. So that's just how I feel about sprint races. So yeah, we put a race weekend in your race weekend. That's true. All right. Next meme. So this is showing track dominance. So there's a lot of little graphics that happen during the race weekend to kind of like explain to the audience like what's going on, like who has better track position, like who's going faster in what sectors and what parts of the track. So in certain cases, they'll compare two drivers together, give them two different colors, and explain like, okay, this driver is good in these sections of the track, and this driver is better in these sections of the track. But in this case, they compared Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll together, and then Alonso was better in every section of the track than Stroll. I don't know if this was edited or not. This might be edited, but it would be funny if this was actually a real graphic that they used. This is real. Okay, so this was a real graphic they showed. I'm gonna give this one a Lamau. Because it's those little like scuffed moments in F1 that makes it like really goddamn funny. Because it's just like they spend so much money and so much manpower like doing these things, and then they just do like little scuffed like weird things like this where they just like, well, you're not even comparing them, you're just calling Stroll garbage. So maybe it was some intern's bright idea to do that, I don't know, but that's a Lamau for me. It's pretty funny. And that's the last meme. That's the last meme of my meme review. All right. I'm going to take a 2-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll do the tier list. And oh my God, we've been talking for like more than 2 hours now. I didn't know if I'd fill in 2 hours, but I guess I can talk about Formula One forever. So we'll take a 2-minute break and I'll be right back. You get to see my be right back screen. supposed to do that. All right, mechanics, we're back. And I don't know how to OBS, apparently. All right, let's get into tier list. I should have thought this out better. Hold on. Got that. Oop. This. Okay. So we got the tier list, but we also have photos. So let's yeah, I guess we can do that. Okay. All right, so we're gonna rate drivers. So this is just how much I like the drivers and kind of, I guess, respect them. Honestly, like, all the drivers definitely deserve respect, not just because A, they're human beings, but B, because they are at the pinnacle of motorsport, right? Like, the teams want them there. Like, they have achieved enough through their careers to warrant being up at the top, right? Like, they're at the top level for a reason. Some are more deserving than others. Like, I would say there's a few drivers here that probably should give up their seat for one reason or another, probably because there's better talent waiting to get into Formula One and there's only really 20 seats available. But because for one reason or another, maybe they're reliable, they're more marketable, or, you know, bring certain sponsorship deals with them, they're in the sport. So, hold on one second. Where was I? What was I talking about? Oh yeah. So yeah, let's just go through and we'll see where everybody lands up. So the first driver, I'm gonna go basically, I guess, alphabetically, really, based on what's in my folder here. So we're gonna go with Alex Albon first. So Alex is the British Thai driver for Williams. He was in Red Bull to start. He was teammates with Max Verstappen. Unfortunately, he was really thrown into Formula One without basically any preparation. He didn't have a manager. He didn't have like any support, and he was sort of like lost. And he did his best, but he really kind of fell apart within a season, and he was eventually removed from Red Bull and replaced. He has since like really gotten his stuff together. He's a really great young guy. He's got a really good head about him. He has a good team around him. There's some amazing interviews out there where you can watch him talk about like the struggles he went through, where he's at now, like what he's trying to achieve. And I just have like a ton of respect for this kid. He's just like really smart. He's, you know, handsome. He's got a really cool girlfriend. So his girlfriend is a women's PGA player. Her name's Lily. They take amazing Instagram photos together. They're so cute. Definitely check them out on Instagram if you want just like cute couple photos. But yeah, I definitely have Alex kind of slated as someone who could win the world championship if he got into the right team and the right car. He's got a really awesome mentality, and I think he's just overall like a really cool, well-spoken guy. Really, really analytical, really good at speaking. And I think I would put him, gosh, I'm really torn between like love and talented. I think at this point in time, I really do love him. I think he's definitely an S tier driver for me, but we'll see how this starts shaping out, and I might like move him down. We'll see. I think Alex is probably one of my favorite drivers for sure. All right, so Alex. All right, next we have Fernando Alonso. So Alonso, coming into the sport like later on in Alonso's career, I don't really think of him that highly. I can see why he has a big fan base and why people like him for one reason or another. Being a two-time world champion, having a certain type of attitude, definitely like a troll. Like he's just a big troll, especially on social media. Like at one point there were people speculating he was going to be Taylor Swift's boyfriend, and he was just like memeing about it and like dropping hints that weren't really there to make people think he was Taylor Swift's boyfriend. So Yeah, he's a bit of a troll. I think I don't know. He kind of rubs me the wrong way. I don't really get along with his personality that much, but like he's okay. I'm gonna put him in mid, just because like not that he's a bad driver, like he's a great driver, but like for me, I just like I don't really get him. He's not really my type of personality. His rivalries with Lewis have been kind of like, all right, whatever. So yeah, he's like a mid driver for me. All right, Valtteri. Valtteri's pretty cool. I like Valtteri. Really good driver, though he's stuck in a really crappy team right now, and I don't think he's trying very hard while he's at the crappy team, because I think he's just like enjoying life and enjoying just driving and not really pushing himself very hard. But I think when he was at Mercedes, he had a lot going for him. He's just a cool finish dude. And yeah, just like a nice guy overall. I think he's got a good head about him. So I'm going to put him in decent. I think a few years ago I would have put him in talented, but now that he's in what, I don't even know what it's called anymore. The Sauber team. Now that he's in Sauber, he's just like, I don't think he's really giving it his all anymore. So he may be on the way to retirement. Who knows? Next, Carlos Sainz. So Carlos was probably the first driver that I caught on to as like a driver I really wanted to support. So when I started watching F1, McLaren was Carlos and Lando. So there was like a bromance going on between them. A lot of the fans called them Carlando as like their shipping name. And they have like a really good kind of like brotherly relationship going on. Carlos being like the older brother, Lando being the younger brother. And he's a good driver. He's been in the sport quite a while now. He started out in Red Bull, AlphaTauri, and he's gone to McLaren, and now he's in Ferrari. And I think he's honestly at this point like as good and probably a better driver than Charles Leclerc at Ferrari. He's going to be out of a seat for next season so far, so they're replacing him with Lewis Hamilton, because I said Lewis was going to go to Ferrari. So Carlos is out of a seat at the moment, though he's, talking behind the scenes, trying to negotiate to go to another team. I hope he lands at one of the other top teams. Like, I hope he goes to a Mercedes or something like that, because he's definitely like a top tier driver. I think he's very talented. I think he's genuinely a pretty good guy. So I think I'm going to put him in the talented section, because I would say like he was the first driver I was a fan of, basically, like watching Drive to Survive. I thought he was just pretty cool. All right, next up, Sergio Perez, Checo. So Checo is interesting. He's been in the sport a long time. He was generally in the lower end teams like Force India / Racing Point. A few years back, he was going to be out of a seat, and he pulled off this incredible miracle move during the race where he spun out, was in last place, and crawled his way all the way back and won the race in first place. And everyone like lost their fucking mind. And he was basically at that point proving to the rest of the grid that he deserved to have a seat for next year. And Red Bull gave him that seat. So Red Bull let them drive for them alongside Max Verstappen, and he's been Max's wingman ever since. So Checo was sort of instrumental in getting Max to win the 2021 World Championship. He's also been called the Mexican Minister of Defense, because he had a few races where he played defense for Max, held up the field, and kept Lewis and the other top drivers from overtaking Max. So it allowed Max to edge out just enough points to win the World Championship in 2021. So Checo's a good guy. He gets in his own head a lot. Last year, he really was not at the top of his game. He was crashing out. He was not qualifying well. He was overanalyzing what he was doing. And I think it was because, like any of these drivers, they want to be world champion, right? If they're in the same car, supposedly, as Max Verstappen, who is winning world championships, they also want to be able to prove that they can win the world championship because there's no higher honor than doing so. So I think he got it really in his head that like he needs to be world champion, and sometimes that just psychs these guys out. Like it becomes a huge mental burden on them, and then they just kind of like get in their own head, and it starts ruining their race because their mental game is just off. But Checo's a really cool dude. I think he's a really top tier driver. Unfortunately, like he can have a bad season if he gets in his own head. So honestly, last year was a little disappointing for me. I want to put him in decent. I think if he had a better season last year, I would put him in the talented section, but I'm going to put him in decent. He seems to be doing better this year. He's playing more of the support role again, and he's being more consistent. So I think he's going to have a better year. But there are a lot of people that were afraid that he was going to be out of a seat after next year because he wasn't doing so well, because he almost cost the team the Constructors Championship if he didn't get his act together. All right. So next up we have Daniel Ricciardo. So Daniel, like I said, he's very charismatic, handsome guy. A lot of fans like him, but he just hasn't been there the last few years. The Red Bull let him come back. He's driving for the AlphaTauri / Racing Bulls team, which is Red Bull's sister team, and he's just not doing well. He's not doing as well as his teammate Yuki Tsunoda, who's a much younger, I wouldn't call him inexperienced now because he's been in F1 for 4 years now, but you know, Daniel's been in the sport a long time. He's supposed to be beating his teammate at every race, and he's just not. For whatever reason, he's just kind of lost his mojo in a lot of ways, whether it's the way the car handles or whether it's just his own mental game getting in his own head. Unfortunately, Daniel kind of sucks now, so I'm going to put him in a mid. I would put him in decent if he had more moments of brilliance, but he doesn't. So I think he's a mid at this point. Yeah. Feels bad, but you know, it happens. All right. So next driver, Pierre Gasly. So Pierre is really interesting. Pierre is a French driver. He drives for Alpine, which is the French team. He was with AlphaTauri. He was in Red Bull. He also, like Alex Albon, was pulled off of the team after having some difficulties. Basically, the problem is Max Verstappen is an alien, and Red Bull is looking for aliens to join their team, like drivers that are so far and beyond normal human ability to drive that everyone pales in comparison to Max. But again, like drivers like Pierre, like Alex, they got in their own head driving next to Max, and then they ended up like trying too hard and, you know, not performing to the level that they should be, unfortunately. So Pierre right now, he drives for Alpine. In this photo, he was driving for AlphaTauri. This is his maiden win at Monza, and this really just meant the world to him. I love this photo. I thought this race was like just magical. The champagne spraying on the podium, the confetti falling down, and then after the other drivers had left the podium, he just sat down and cried. Because he was just so emotional about it. And prior to this, like, you should know some of the lore about Pierre. A few years ago, a driver, his best friend, in one of the feeder series, died in one of the races on an F1 weekend. So his name was Antoine Hubert. He was another French driver. Antoine and Pierre got into racing together. They grew up together and they were best buds. And Pierre went into F1, and you know, he knew that Antoine would be in F1 someday as well. But unfortunately, Antoine died in an F2 race on a weekend that also had F1. So it was really devastating for Pierre, and Pierre has made it kind of his mission to carry on both of their dreams together. So that's part of the emotion, part of the drama that goes on with Pierre. It's a very, very interesting story, very sad. But Pierre has been, he's had moments of brilliance in the past, but he's been not so great recently. I'm gonna put Pierre in a mid. I think he's like he's kind of lost a bit of it. I think that's just because he's been in a crappy team the last couple of years. I think if they put him in a better car, he might shape up. But I think because Alpine has sucked the last 3 years, it hasn't bode well for him, and AlphaTauri wasn't doing great either. Judging him based only on Alpine's car, the worst on the grid at all. I mean, even in AlphaTauri, like I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Like, I feel like he could be a decent if he was in another car. I don't know how I really feel about him personally. He's kind of a bro. Yeah, he was on par with Yuki and Alpha. I think, all right. I like him more than Alonso. So I think I'm going to put him in decent. Yeah, I'll put him in decent. Okay, he's going in decent. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see what the future holds for Pierre. All right, George. This is George Russell. So George Russell's another like British golden child. He's a very polarizing figure because he's got this ego. He's a very ego-driven guy. He knows he's handsome. He knows he's hot shit. He has good sides to him too. Like he's one of the directors on the Grand Prix Drivers Association, which is basically like the drivers union. So he cares a lot about driver safety, championing like driver contracts and things that like benefit the drivers to keep the drivers protected. He also has like flashes of heated moments where he'll like torpedo into another car accidentally, quote unquote accidentally, or he'll be like in the heat of the moment like driving up alongside somebody and then get into an accident together. So he's had moments in the past where he's done kind of stupid things that he really shouldn't have done, while also having this like, you know, I'm sexy and I know it attitude. But he's genuinely like a good driver. I think he's a decent guy. I've liked him. I liked his performance at Williams. And then he tried really hard to get into Mercedes, and now he's at Mercedes. He's more or less proven himself alongside Lewis. He's definitely outqualified Lewis quite a bit in the last couple of years, while the Mercedes car hasn't been that great. But he seems to have like a good first half of the season, and then in the second half he starts making more mistakes and falls off a bit. I think he could definitely be a world champion someday if he got a really good car. He definitely did amazing in the feeder series. I'm gonna put him in the talented. I like George for the most part. I think sometimes he's kind of boneheaded, but for the most part I like him. All right, next up, Nico Hulkenberg. So Nico has been in the sport for a very long time. He's been in and out of the sport for a very long time. So he came in, he never, I don't think he ever podiumed. I think he's like one of the drivers that's like done the most races without a podium. But he's always been seen as like a very good, reliable driver. Like he's the one that's reliable. He was out of F1 for a few years because he didn't have a seat, but he's like everyone's favorite reserve driver. So anytime a driver would get sick or be out due to injury, they'd pull in Nico. So Nico would be like the man they can count on. He's back in the sport now. He drives for Haas alongside Kevin Magnussen. He's okay. I don't know. He's not really my kind of personality. He's just kind of like German bro guy. So I think he's like a mid. Yeah, he's like a mid for me. I don't really know what to think about him. He's just Nico. He's just the Hulk. All right, next driver, Kevin Magnussen. So Kevin also drives for Haas. Kevin drove for Haas since Haas was started alongside Romain Grosjean, and then he was out of a seat for a year, 2 years, because that's when they pulled in Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher. And then he went off, had a kid with his wife, and then when they got rid of Mazepin and needed another driver, they immediately called Kevin back. So Kevin came back. Kevin's great. Kevin's got a great attitude. He's not the most amazing driver. He's honestly kind of slow, but he's a really likable guy. He's also kind of like a middle class kind of dude. Knows how to like weld, had like a real job outside of Formula One for a little bit. He's got a couple of cute kids, a daughter, and I think a son, baby son, or both daughters. I don't know. Anyway, he brings his daughter to the track and it's really cute. And he's just a cool guy. He's nothing special. Yeah, 2 daughters. Okay. So yeah, I'd say I like Kevin. I think he's had a couple of really great moments where he pulled off like pole position because of something weird that happened with a red flag or whatever. And that's where the real Viking shit meme came from. So I like Kevin. I think Kevin's cool. I'm gonna put Kevin in decent, even if he's like not the fastest driver. I want to keep seeing him in F1. All right, next up, Lance Stroll. So Lance Stroll. So you remember that meme with the billionaire who owns Aston Martin and he's got the Infinity Stones? That was Lawrence Stroll. Lance Stroll is Lawrence Stroll's son. Guess how Lance got into Formula One? His daddy pays the bills. So Lance has been in F1 because his dad, pays for a seat, which is not unheard of in Formula One. He is a Nepo baby. Yep. Pay drivers have been in the sport since forever. Some of the greatest drivers in the sport were pay drivers, like Niki Lauda. Niki Lauda paid for his own seat in F1. So I don't want to say there's nothing wrong with being a pay driver, but honestly, in this day and age, we have so much talent waiting to get into F1. Someone like Lance, who is a decent driver in his own right, but again, he's like nothing special. He definitely earned his way there, but he earned his way there because like his dad paid for everything and he got everything he needed to make those steps. So you can argue about that like forever, right? Like is nepotism bad, blah blah blah, but basically Lance is in F1 because his dad pays for his seat and owns the team. Lance himself is he's kind of funny. So he's Canadian. He's got this attitude where he really just doesn't like giving interviews. He's just like whatever. Like they'll ask him a question, he'll be like, yeah, we're going on track this weekend and we're gonna do our best. I don't know, so he's kind of got like that attitude. So he's not very charismatic. He's a little asocial, yeah, but from what I've heard from what people have said is he's like the nicest driver in the paddock among the other drivers. So like he's friends with everybody. He's a really nice guy. He's not mean to anybody. He never talks shit. He can get heated, like we saw him like push his trainer one time, but that was like a really bad moment, like after he had gotten like seriously injured and things were just not going his way, and shit like that kind of happens. But yeah, apparently he's a really nice dude. But he's still a Nepo baby. So I'm gonna say mid, because he has gotten on the podium in the past. He is an okay driver. So that's Lance Stroll. All right, Lando Norris. Lando Norris is my driver, Oshi. Lando is my favorite driver. Young guy, really cool. Also kind of like really anxious dude that's gaining confidence. Struggles with mental health, very outspoken about that. Streams on Twitch. He streamed on Twitch a lot during the pandemic. Sometimes he plays Fortnite with his bros. He's probably had like 5 girlfriends at this point. Very handsome dude, just cool and very outspoken. Nowadays, he used to have like a social media manager that had a really tight grip on him, and she was great. She was really funny, and she would just tell him to like knock shit off or like, not make a fool of himself. But once she moved on to greener pastures, he just has kind of like let loose and just said like really funny shit to the media, or like they'll like chastise him for like swearing and stuff, and he just like he's kind of a like I don't give a fuck attitude nowadays. But he's an extremely talented driver. I think he's not on Max's level, but I think he's just below Max in pure ability for racing. Like a lot of the other drivers, he has his own brand. He has like a fashion brand. He has an esports team and like an esports / extreme sports brand. So he pushes that. So he's got a lot going on for him. And he's just an overall like likable dude. He's like the kind of dude I'd be like, hey, let's, go to a party together, right? He's just that kind of cool guy. Maybe he's an asshole in real life. I don't know. Who knows? We only know what we see on TV, right? And on social media. So Lando is my Oshi. Lando goes in the love. Lando goes in the first love spot. Alex has to move over a bit. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about Lando. He's great. All right, next up, Charles Leclerc. So Charles is from Monaco. He's Monegasque. He is the golden boy of Formula One and Ferrari in a sense, in that like he is the handsome young man who should be winning the championship and should be winning for Ferrari and getting all the glory. He also has a bit of a tragic backstory. His godfather, who's, you know, basically a member of his family, Jules, was the last person killed in Formula One back in 2014. So he died on a rainy day in Suzuka. His car collided with one of the tractors that was getting another car off the track, and unfortunately he suffered, you know, spinal injury and died, unfortunately. And that's why some of the safety measures that we have on the cars now, like the Halo, are standard equipment on the car, so that something like that never happens again. But Jules Bianchi was in Ferrari. He was supposed to be their shining light, their one to bring them back to the championship, and Charles has kind of made it his life's mission to carry on Jules's legacy and become world champion for Ferrari. So Charles got a lot going for him. He's very intense, but he also, like I said before, he beats himself up a lot. He's very hard on himself, but he has a lot of fans that sort of baby him and go, "Oh, it'll be okay, Charles." So they should make an F1 anime with these kinds of plotlines. I know, right? Like the truth is stranger than fiction. Like some of the shit that goes on here is insane. So I will say that a very good friend of mine is actually working on a comic right now that is, you know, kind of in line with the drama that happens in F1. So I'm going to be promoting that in the near future when you see that. So I'll let you know more about that as it comes. So Charles really good. I think he's definitely in the top 4 or 5 drivers. I would definitely put him in the talented slot. He's not quite a love for me because he's how do I put this? He's a bit dramatic. Like he plays the piano, and sometimes he puts out like piano music about how he feels about what went on in a race. And you know, I think that's a great way to compartmentalize your feelings and your emotions, but to me it's also like a little bit cringy, and I just think it's a little silly. But that's just Charles being Charles. So he's the saddest boy. He really is. He's such a sad boy. So he goes in the talented. I'd put him above George actually, but right next to Carlos. So we'll put Charles in the middle there. He's cringe but free. You got it. Exactly. He does what he wants. Next up, Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis Hamilton, I would definitely consider to be the greatest, or on the greatest level, the greatest of all time. So he is the GOAT. He is the current GOAT, up there with Michael Schumacher, up there with Niki Lauda, up there with Senna. I think Lewis is the shit. He's amazing. He's a bit of an awkward dude. He's dedicated his entire life to racing from childhood. His father managed him for many years. His dad worked multiple jobs to get him to where he is today. He struggled from, you know, probably like a lower middle class UK upbringing. Definitely dealt with, of course, you know, adversity due to racism and all that. He's done a lot for the sport through his actions and his money. He most recently created what's called the Hamilton Commission, which was a study done within Formula One and motorsport to look at how much or how little there is in the way of racial equality and gender equality within the sport. And by doing that, he created a report to give to the teams and to the governing bodies to say, look, these are the facts. This is what you're lacking in diversity and what diversity could do to help based on what's happened in other industries. So the teams are actually taking that and using that as a guideline to improve their staff and their hiring practices and what, you know, how they run their teams and improve their diversity, equity, and inclusion models. So it's actually been a huge boon for the sport in the last few years. So he's been doing a lot on that end of things. He's also been promoting fashion, like high fashion. So he's definitely into the high fashion scene. He comes to the racetrack every weekend wearing something different, promoting a brand that he likes or a fashion designer that he admires. So there's Tumblrs and Twitters out there called things like Lewis looks and, you know, Lewis fashion and stuff like that. So you can get an idea of like all the cool outfits he wears. And he's definitely wearing a lot of cool outfits. Some kind of stuff that's kind of out there, but a lot of stuff that's like, oh, never seen that before. That's pretty dope. One of the other really cool things he's done. So he showed up at the Met Gala a couple of years ago. He bought out a table and he brought along up and coming Black fashion designers and hosted them at the Met Gala so that they could get, you know, themselves in the scene and show off their designs and their clothes and, you know, kind of elevate stuff that he finds really cool and is, you know, meaningful to him. And I just thought that was like one of the coolest things he's done in the last few years. So Lewis is a huge boon for the sport. Won many championships. He's an amazing driver. Do I love him? He's like somewhere in between love and talented. I think it's just because like he has like this weird antisocialness about him that kind of rubs me a little the wrong way, but like literally everything else about him is like amazing. So I think I'm gonna put him in talented, but I'm gonna put him on like the high end of talented. He's just a little odd when it comes to like socialness. I don't really know how to put my finger on it, but yeah. But yeah, Lewis is awesome. He's the GOAT. All right, next up we have Logan Sargent. Logan Sargent is the only American driver in F1 right now. So American drivers are pretty rare in F1 for mainly because, you know, F1 is a European-based sport, American motorsport. It's hard to break into F1. Basically, to rise the ranks from a child to teenager to someone that competes in F1, you have to be living in Europe, probably the UK. So it's really hard to break into the scene unless you're living in Europe. So that's why a lot of Americans living in America end up going to, you know, stock car stuff like NASCAR, or they go to, you know, IndyCar open wheel series or Indy Lights, which is like the Indy feeder series. And that's very hard for a young person to go to Europe and live there. I was talking about Checo before, and he actually like basically moved to Germany on his own at like the age of like 13 or 14 and just lived at like a Mexican restaurant in Germany for most of his teenage years, like while he made his way through the feeder series. I don't even think his family came with him. I think they stayed back in Mexico. So the drivers have to sacrifice a lot, like from a young age, if they want to really compete in the sport. And it's a ton of money too. It's a ton of money. There's no other sport that's as prohibitively expensive as F1 or any of the motorsport series, because even from a young age at karting is expensive. I mean, you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars every year to buy the kart, upkeep the kart, pay for tires, travel around. It's like it's your life and it's your family's life. So yeah. And you basically hope that you can get that sponsorship, or, you know, your parents are rich. So that's why there's a lot of little rich millionaires in F1. But Logan's the only American driver. He's bad. He's not good. He sucks. Get out, Logan. His family politics also suck too. I won't get into that, but I'm not keen on that either. He has an okay attitude. I think he's a little lost in F1. I don't think he really fits in with the other drivers. There's been like some video clips of him like standing around and like they're all talking to each other and they're not really talking to him. So I think he's a little, yeah, he's a little out of place. He's really an odd choice to be in F1 because there are so many other talented drivers, but I think it's just the case of like, well, Williams doesn't have a lot of money, so they take what they can get. And Logan, at least as an American, they were hoping he would attract more of an American audience and American sponsorships, but like, I can't really name any American fan that gives a shit about Logan Sargent. So yeah, unfortunate. I feel kind of bad for him, but you know, he's just almost dead last every race. Yeah, it's not really his fault if they exclude him. It's just like what I've seen from him. He just seems kind of lost, right? And I think that lostness may affect his mental game on track as well, because we know that he struggled some weekends like building himself up, right? So there's there's a mental game to starting your Friday strong and then getting even stronger on Saturday and then like finishing really strong on a Sunday. Even if you don't win, you're doing things that you would normally not be able to do if you were in a bad mental state. And I think that for him, he's probably not in a great mental state because of, you know, maybe personal relationships or like how he feels within his place in the sport and things like that. So I do feel bad for him, but he's also just, yeah, he's just Logan. All right, next up, Max Verstappen. So Max Verstappen, world champion, Dutch wonderkind. He's a fucking alien. He's insane. As a person, he's just kind of a normal guy attitude. Just a normal guy, not really outspoken about anything, but driving wise, he's on another level. He's on another planet. Yeah, he's super cute with kids. So currently his partner, Kelly PK, she has a daughter that she had with another driver from back in the day. And Max is basically her daughter's adopted father. So her Kelly's daughter's name is Penelope, and they call her P for short. And Max and P get along very well. Sometimes when Max is streaming on iRacing, P will come up and like bother him while he's racing, and she'll be like, come play with me, and he's like, no, I'm racing. But she's been showing up to the track, and they're having some, you know, good like adopted father-daughter time and stuff like that. So he seems like he has a good heart. But he does the tea party later. Yeah, I mean, you got to finish the race before you can have the tea party, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, Max, genuinely pretty good dude. His entire reason for being is racing, though. Like, everything he does is about racing. When he's not on the track, he's at home on the simulator. He's on iRacing. I think the only thing he does that isn't racing related is play FIFA. And I think he's one of like the top 5 players in the world for FIFA. So yeah, he's a bit nuts. Incredible driver. Like, really, probably once in a, not even once in a generation, probably once in a sport kind of racing genius. And I never call anyone a genius. I think like he's a literal racing genius. And that's why he is number 1. So I'm going to put him, I don't love him though, so he's going to go in talented, but he's going to go below Lewis because he hasn't done as much as Lewis yet, but he may get there someday. So I'm going to put Max in the talented because this is just how I feel about the drivers, not how good they are, especially. All right, next up, Esteban Ocon. He's fine. He's an our French driver. He and Pierre have like this sort of kind of rivalry. They were like best buddies growing up in karting, and then like something happened, like something to do with a sponsor, and then Pierre like getting ahead of him in the race, and Esteban thought it was unfair, and then they had a falling out, and now they're back together in the same team, but they're like okay with each other. They don't hate each other. The most appealing thing about Esteban Ocon is he likes comic book superheroes. Yeah, like he's just Esteban. I don't know. He's from like a middle class-ish family, which is kind of cool. It's like unique in the sense that most of these guys came from, you know, rich families, and he's not. But I don't know. Yeah, I think he's a they tried for me. I honestly like Lance Stroll more than I like Esteban Ocon. He likes belly dancing? What? All right. Does he do the belly dancing, or does he just like, oh, he likes to belly dance? Okay, cool. Good for him. That kind of elevates him a little bit in my head. But he's still just like they tried. He's not doing very well right now because Alpine really sucks. I don't think he's that great a driver. I think he's okay, but he's not great. Next up, Oscar Piastri. So Oscar is the latest genius rookie child to come onto the grid. So Oscar drives for McLaren alongside Lando Norris. He's the one who replaced Daniel Ricciardo when Daniel got kicked out of McLaren. He's pretty amazing. He's definitely still learning his way in F1, but he absolutely crushed and dominated the lower feeder series and getting into F1. he was basically the no-brainer for the next like great rookie in F1. So really happy he's with McLaren. In some races and in some qualifyings, he is giving Lando a run for his money. He's definitely challenging Lando, which I like, because it's letting Lando not sit still. It's making him push harder. So I think he's a really good partner to Lando, being his teammate. They push each other. I think Oscar could definitely be world championship material someday. I think he's a good kid. He's very level-headed. He's level-headed to the point where like he almost doesn't have any personality, because he's just kind of they'll tell him things on track. They're like, Oscar, you got to hurry up. And he's like, yep, working on it. He just has like that kind of attitude. And he's got this like, I think I'm finally catching on. He's got this like low level sarcasm going on that's actually pretty funny. So I think I'm just like still warming up to him, but I'm definitely liking where he's going. And I like his partnership with Lando. They get along well. There's this funny like lore that if you go back through Oscar's like old social media posts, someone did some digging and found that like he used to like click like or retweet on like every single one of Lando's posts, and it was sort of like a fanboy situation almost. So we don't really know if it was like Oscar himself doing that on his social media, or if it was like his social media manager doing that for him. But it was really weird, because it seems like Oscar was just like a Lando fanboy for years, and now he gets to drive alongside his like ideal F1 driving partner. So yeah, this was when he was 14, so he probably didn't have a social media manager, so he probably was just a Lando fan, because Lando just turned 23, 24, and Oscar, Lando's like 24 and Oscar just turned like 22 or something like that. So pretty interesting. I would put Oscar in the talented for sure. He's definitely probably going to be on the same level as a Lewis. Definitely at the same level as Lando and Alex as well. I think they're all kind of in the same ballpark. The thing with Formula One is these guys are so close to each other, a lot of them. Unless they kind of suck, they're really like close to each other in ability. It's really dependent on like what their mental game is that year or that weekend, or like what car they're driving, if the car is like good enough to win a championship. All right. Couple more to go. We got Yuki Tsunoda. So Yuki is the only Japanese driver on the grid. I didn't like Yuki. Oh, actually, I did like Yuki at the very start. I thought he was kind of cool. I was like kind of rooting for him, but he's kind of weird. He's kind of gross. He's very angry. He's a very angry child, which is kind of atypical for Japanese drivers. But he's been around like European pit crews and engineers for so long. I think he picked up a lot of their like nasty language and kind of like angry mentality, and I think he kind of compartmentalized that and made it part of himself. But he's definitely becoming a really good driver. Like I said before, he's definitely outperforming Daniel Ricciardo on the Racing Bulls team, so they're teammates together, and he's basically outperforming Daniel every race. So he's definitely becoming a good driver. I don't think he's ever going to be at a level where he can go to Red Bull proper unless something really weird happened. So I think Yuki's personality wise, I don't really care for him that much, but I think he's like I would put him in a decent. I think he's got more to show, I think is the thing. I think he has more to show. He has more progression there, and he's got a lot of hidden talent that has not yet come out yet, and he's just got to keep pushing for it. He's got some fun relationships. He was teammates with Pierre when they were in AlphaTauri together, so they're like best buds. They're still kind of best buds. And yeah, he's just kind of a goofy little Japanese guy. So yeah, we'll see what Yuki does in the coming years. All right, last driver, Guan Yu Zhou. So Zhou is the only Chinese driver on the grid. He is the first Chinese driver in Formula One. Decent guy, seems like a pretty cool, level-headed guy. He's got good fashion sense. I think in Chinese media they highlight a lot of like his what he's wearing that week. He's on the cover of a lot of men's magazines in Asia and stuff like that. Seems like a cool dude. He's stuck in the Sauber team though, along with Valtteri, and the team just sucks. Like the car sucks. hasn't really had the ability to show where he's at. I think he could do as good as maybe a Kevin Magnussen or a Pierre, but he hasn't had the opportunity to really show what he can do. Yeah, he's kind of an unknown. I don't know how long he's going to last, but he's definitely got Chinese money and sponsorships behind him, so he's good for whatever team has him. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm optimistic about Joe. I want to see where he goes, but for now, I don't really know what he's capable of. So I'll just put him in. I'll put him in mid, just because like usually Valtteri outqualifies him and outraces him, but that's to be expected because Valtteri's a great driver. So yeah, probably just mid for now. Whew. All right, so that's all 20 drivers on the grid. And, my rating really skewed like upward more than I thought it would. I thought I'd put more down here, but I guess I'm just like too nice to some of these guys. So, yeah. Holy crap, how did I talk for 3 hours? That's insane. Well, thank you guys so much for coming today. Appreciate you listening to the mad ramblings of a Formula One fanboy and talking about all the different aspects and drivers and stuff like that. So, yeah, I will be back next week with more streams. Again, I'll be off on Friday, but I'll get my schedule out this weekend, and we'll have some more fun. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great night. Thanks for sticking around, and have a great weekend. And let's see who we can raid. Who's on right now? Let's raid Mr. Cool. Oh wait, Babinka Bear's on. She's playing Final Fantasy 14. If Babinka wasn't on, we'd be raiding Mr. Cool VT because he's got that fucking ice cube. It looks so good. All right, raiding the Babinka Bear. Be kind. Babinka's the shit. And yeah, if you play 14, go join. All right, have a good night, guys. Bye. 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 Bye.